I watched the master key light blink green on a door I'd just deadlatch checked. The desk phone was silent. The elevator panel said, "Service only." Then the stairwell door on 4 eased 2 inches, and whoever had the key didn't ring the desk. Disclaimer: these are allegedly true accounts from overnight hotel shifts. Names, locations, and identifying details have been changed. Some sequences are condensed for clarity. Listener, discretion advised. I took night audit because quiet pays. 12 floors, 2 guest elevators, 1 service car that calls itself an elevator but breathes like a stair. Front desk island with the printer that chews at 0200, camera wall above the key safe, and a landline with a line-in-use lamp I've learned not to trust. Tuesday nights don't perform. You can hear the ice machine think. Key inventory balanced at 23.58, master ring in the safe, spare set, sealed in the manager envelope with 2 initials and a crease. Housekeeping keeps their pushcarts behind a badge door on 3. Engineering owns the cage in the sub-basement where old door hardware goes to retire. On paper, it's an easy map. In person, the building is a throat. I walked my first lap, slow enough to put names to small sounds. Lobby, sanitizer and printer dust, breakfast room closed, chairs asleep on tables, business center monitors, cycling that polite blue, screensaver, no one changes. The camera wall showed 12 slices of nothing interesting, hall carpets, elevator lobbies, a slice of the service corridor on 4 if you leaned your head just right. At midnight, nothing interesting is a kind of promise. 4 is the floor that tells the truth. It's where the service corridor T-bones the guest hall, where housekeeping's push-button closet lives, where the stair that thinks it's a lung meets the back of the elevators. I take 4 twice an hour because it repays attention. Room 417 sits 3 doors down from the service corridor door. Its peephole glass has a hairline crack you only see if you hate hairline cracks. Deadlatch on that lock is honest when it wants to be, and dramatic when it doesn't. I put fingertips to the latch, pressed until I felt its seat. Solid. I wrote the time. Paper likes being told it was there. Past 417, the corridor air changes. You can feel the service stair draft at sleeve level, a faint pull that tells you which way pressure would prefer to travel. Housekeeping's closet wears a plastic supplies sign with a corner of tape curling up like a bad habit. The push-button lock sticks on humid days. Tonight, it felt fine. I let the back of my knuckles learn its temperature anyway. Cool at the hinge, cool at the latch. Good. Elevator lobbies are honest at night if you listen to them. The guest cars sleep with their eyes open. Sometimes the door open relay ticks to itself in the shaft, a mechanical thought you hear in your teeth. The service car has its own panel around the corner, a simple, service-only lamp that comes on for real reasons, and for reasons you can't put on paper. I made a note of its honest dark. Back downstairs, I ran the shift-close pre-flight, comp folios staged, charge batches queued, breakfast count updated from a clipboard that lies by omission. A bored airport shuttle pinged our line twice and hung up. Wrong hotel, again. The landline's line in use flickered and then forgot it had ever been lit. My phone laid itself face down and gave me airplane mode for free. I prefer buildings that talk with air and metal. At 0037, a guest called to ask if the pool was open like secret open. I said no in the voice you learn for the kind of no that people still like you after. At 048, the elevator on the West Bank stopped at 7 and forgot to be called again. At 0059, the ice machine on 9 coughed and found its hum, the kind of self-correction old machines do when they don't want paperwork. I took the long way back to 4. Carpet makes you think you're quiet. Doors tell on you. I keep my keys nested, so they don't announce me before I mean to be announced. The service corridor door on 4 always exhales a narrow breath when you open it, like a secret being careful not to leave. The camera that covers that slice of hallway sits just crooked enough that you see 417's number at the edge and have to lean to convince yourself you saw it. 417 again. Deadlatch felt right. Handle slack, then firm, like a handshake with manners. Peephole showed the warped version of me it has always shown. I ran a fingernail under the door sweep to feel for the kind of grit that tells you someone's traded inside air with the hallway a little more than they should. Clean. I wrote it down because small truths are the weather inside. Housekeeping closet. Push-button caps level, not shiny from new love. The supplies sign lifted and settled when the air from the service stair moved past my calves. That stair is a metronome if you let it be. It exhaled twice and then remembered to behave. I didn't open it. Doors that breathe politely deserve to keep their politeness. Back at the desk, the night settled into the paperwork rhythm. Audit roll, cash drop reconcile, a folio that thinks taxes are optional. I let the camera wall shrink to one big tile of 4, top left, because I like having the corner of my eye trained on the place that tells the truth. In the small hours, corners are better than centers. The key safe's display cycles on a timer, green dot for OK, amber for audit due, red when it wants to make managers text you. It sat green like a patient light in a patient room. The spare set in the envelope stayed a crease and 2 initials in my head, right where it's supposed to live. The master ring sleeps heavy, you can feel its weight through steel. I told myself these facts the way you tell yourself a bedtime story you can stand. At 0110, I did my second 4 lap. The service-only lamp was dark. The guest elevators pretended to be bored. 417's deadlatch seated again with that little, satisfying internal click. I checked the strike plate screws for pride. Flush, not proud, not shy. The peephole's crack hadn't grown. Hairlines don't heal. The housekeeping lock was cool. The stair draft was the size of a whisper. The phone at the desk gave me line in use for half a second and then shamefully went back to quiet. The property system showed no active calls, no room-to-room, no line seizes. That lamp lies when it wants attention. I let it. At 0121, a housekeeping cartwheel thumped in the back of my head. Not out loud, memory. The kind of noise you picture when you're alone in a hallway that's supposed to be empty. Nothing on the camera, nothing under the supplies door except my patience and a seam of light where the jam meets paint. I said hello to 4, the way you do when you're trying to make a place behave out of politeness. The building said nothing. That's good most nights. Then 0123 took a breath and held it. The indicator on 417's reader, tiny LED above the handle, blinked green. No handle move. No latch noise. Just that quiet, polite confirmation light people trust because it means welcome. The corridor air didn't change enough to make a report. The service stair gave a small draft at sleeve height and quit. The service-only lamp on the back panel in the elevator lobby glowed for the time it takes to think of a word and went dark again. My phone stayed the kind of dead that isn't a battery. The desk landline's line in use blinked once more like an apology. I put 2 fingers against 417's handle. Cold, slack, no give. Deadlatch still seated when I pressed the edge with my nail. The door hadn't actually opened. The reader had just decided to feel generous. Green without a guest, green without a hand. I stood there long enough to hear the building decide what it wanted to do next. It chose stillness. I wrote the time because paper won't believe you later. So 123, 417 reader, LED green, no handle actuation. I added service lamp momentary and stair draft, slight for my own sanity. The walk back to the desk was the kind where the carpet grabs your shoes a little too honestly. At the camera wall, the slice of 4 looked exactly like a brochure. Balanced light, no shimmer at the edges, compression behaving like it had practiced. Too perfect for the minute I needed it to be ugly. I sat. The key safe light stayed green. The spare envelope stayed a crease and a pair of initials. The building hummed. My chest did the little metronome it does when it's waiting for someone else's choice. And in the corner of my eye, the service-only lamp considered coming back and decided not to, like a word someone almost says through a door they haven't opened yet. At 01:26 I went back to 4 because answers don't come to desks. Corridor quiet, carpet with that flattened sheen it gets when a vacuum knows its job. 4:17 sat where I'd left it, numbers straight, peephole a tiny fisheye planet. I put a fingertip to the deadlatch again, pressed, seated, good. The reader LED blinked green a second time. No handle movement. No latch sound, just the calm, agreeable confirmation light you trust when you belong somewhere. 2 seconds on, then gone. A polite welcome offered to a door that didn't open. I didn't touch the handle. I listened. The service stair breathed once at sleeve height and then remembered its manners. Down the hall, the service-only lamp at the back panel of the elevator lobby winked alive, held the thought, and let it go. That lamp doesn't flirt. It either has a reason or it's lying with intent. I logged the time against bone, then paper. 01:26, 4:17 reader LED green, no actuation. Service lamp momentary. The act of writing made the air steadier. At 01:27 the desk phone down in the lobby flashed line in use. The PMS showed no room-to-room traffic, no outside Cs, nothing queued to voicemail. I picked up anyway. Handset warm. Silence, the shape of a human, not a dial tones. I said front desk, the way you do, when you want silence to feel welcome enough to tell the truth. It didn't. Back to 4. Housekeeping's push-button closet wore the same tilted supplies sign. I put the back of my knuckles to the latch out of habit. Earlier, cool. Now, a little warmth at the strike, not the hinge. The kind of heat you get from metal that's been under a palm for a minute, not an hour. I didn't open it. We don't open doors that need explanations we don't have. The corridor had a small new mistake. A do not disturb magnet stuck to the frame of 419, not the door, an absent-minded move, or someone handling magnets who isn't thinking about guests. Our housekeepers are better than that. I put it back where it belonged and made the note small because small looks less like opinion on paper. All 129, the guest elevators stayed honest and bored. The service car sighed the way a person shifts in a chair. The service-only lamp glowed again, longer this time, 3 count, maybe 4, and the service doors parted a coin's width and settled back, like a shoulder had negotiated with steel, and the door decided to stay polite. No call on my panel, no maintenance key engaged, just that lamp, deciding it had feelings. I checked for 1 peephole without leaning into it. You can see more by denying a surface your weight. The warped circle gave me the same corridor it always gives, the same numbered carpet, the same room across. Nothing hiding in the fisheye. If someone had shadowed from the service corridor, I would have heard the sweep of air along the jamb. I didn't. Air stayed a thoughtful, small draft. Back at the desk, I let the camera wall give me what it could. The 4-feed, small, crooked angle, just a slice, looked like a brochure. No shimmer at the edges, no bitrate ghosts in the corners, light pooled exactly where it should. Cameras breathe when they're honest. This one practiced being perfect when I needed it to breathe. I made a note without a conclusion. 4-cam clean during event windows. Year 131. The landline's line in use flicked again, sulked, then went back to its nap. I lifted and got warmth without words. Set it down, watched the PMS insist, no active call. The switch is older than me and behaves except when it doesn't. I don't ask it for philosophies, just facts. It refused. I took a calibration lap, touch 415, 419, 421. Handles, slack then firm. Dead latches that seat, strikes with screws flush, not proud. Everything ordinary on either side of 417, which is how oddness hides in a line of things that behave. The D&D magnets sat correct again except for the one I had corrected. The corridor thermostat read a believable 70, but sleeve level pressure said 69 pulling to 68 through the service corridor. Small numbers, real weather. I let myself touch one thing I could justify. The service car call button on 4. Nothing. No meek arrival chirp, no relay tick. But the lamp under service only pulsed once, as if a relay in a different room had cleared its throat. 0133, third green. 4x17's LED again, a soft blink, a careful courtesy. I counted to 2 with my teeth and watched it go dark. No handle, no latch, no card present. I had the small, superstitious thought, if I stand where a guest would stand, will it reward me with the sound I expect? I didn't move. We earn our pay by not being our worst ideas. The push button on the supplies closet, those plastic caps, looked level. One sat a hair lower than the others. Earlier, I would have missed it. Now it felt like handwriting you recognize after you've stared at a signature too long. I put the back of my knuckles to metal again. Warmth at the latch, cooler at the hinge, a thread of air at my ankle that had not existed at midnight. I tested the corridor softly, pressed the pad of a finger to the seam where service door meets jam, the way you learn to read drafts without turning them into a moment. The seam breathed out once and quit. The elevator at the hall end ticked like a clock will when no one is near it. Lure 136, the West Bank guest car, arrived on 4 without a call, doors staying shut, but door open relay thinking loudly in the shaft. I could taste copper in my teeth, which is a nerves trick, not a fact, and I wrote nothing about it. I stood offset from 417 so the peephole would show me as a half shape if anyone cared to look. Nothing pressed back. The corridor held still with intent. I did the only thing I'm allowed that doesn't betray policy. I talked to the air like it was my boss. "If you belong here," I said, quiet even, the voice that gets you through a lobby at 03 Dykes, "you can ring down." The desk phone did not ring. The line in use lamp thought about its life and quit. On the service panel, the service-only lamp pulsed once more, too fast for a decision, like a finger testing a pulse. The doors stayed honest. The temperature at my wrist cooled a degree. I didn't chase, I didn't open. I did what keeps you employed and unembarrassed on morning debriefs. I wrote, Score 126, so 129, 0133, 417 reader, LED green, no handle, no actuation, housekeeping closet latch warm to touch, slight draft at ankle, service lamp momentary X3, desk line in use without PMS call record. On the way back to the desk, I let my hand brush the rail at the service stair. Metal remembers, cool, no sweat, no body heat. But halfway down, the stair gave that small, private sound hinges make when someone has taught them to be gentle. Not my door, a door below or above, telling its own truth to its own landing. At the console, the key safe's green stayed green. The envelope in my mind stayed a crease and 2 initials, sealed. The camera on 4 kept being good in the way that sets your teeth on edge. I clipped the relevant minutes because managers like evidence, even when the evidence is a polite rectangle of nothing. No 139, the line in use lamp, tried once more to have a personality, and the guest elevators chose to be honest and stupidly calm. 4 stayed the same size in my peripheral vision as if the screen could lean. But I had one more small test left that wouldn't get me written up. I repositioned the lobby camera grid so 4 owned the top left and the service car panel owned the top right. Then I aimed my body at the stair door and listened to the whole building the way you listen to someone breathing in the next room. The door didn't open, the light did not blink, but the air across my sleeves learned a new word: waiting. And that's the part that makes your hand hover over policy. When doors behave and lights are polite, and the building rehearses stillness with you in the audience. 0141. I took the long curve back to 4 and stopped before the corner, so the peephole at 417 wouldn't own my face. You can learn a lot by not arriving all the way. The hallway felt like it had been held in a hand, still, a little too considered. I let the air tell me which way it wanted to travel. Toward the service corridor, faint and steady. The guest elevators stayed honest. The service car announced itself with no chime, just the soft settle a car makes when it levels for a floor. The service-only lamp pulsed once, and the doors parted a coin's width, then eased back as if a shoulder had negotiated and both parties decided to be polite. No call on my panel, no maintenance key hung anywhere it should hang. The car's fan ran, then stopped, then ran, breathing like a person trying to be quiet. 417's reader didn't blink. Good. Honest silence is better than polite lies. I checked the things I'm allowed to check. Strike plate screws flush, not proud. Door sweep, tight to carpet. Peephole's hairline crack, not travelling. I pressed the edge of the deadlatch with a thumbnail until it gave me that small, reliable resistance. Seated. I didn't touch the handle. Halfway down the hall, housekeeping's supplies closet wore the same push-button caps, all level, except the second from top sat a hair low, the kind of low you only see after you've stared too long. Earlier, cool metal, now warm at the latch, cooler at the hinge. I put that in my pocket for later. The desk handset downstairs flashed, line in use like a kid waving for attention, and then pretended to nap. The PMS showed no call. I lifted anyway. The plastic had that gentle warmth it gets from a hand that wasn't mine a minute ago. Dead air with a breath shape to it, not dial tone. "Front desk," I said, in the even voice that makes elevators behave. Silence hung on the other end, as if it wanted to practice being a person. Then the lamp went out. No record. Back on 4, a new, small thing, a do not disturb magnet sitting on 4117's frame, belly to paint instead of facing out. Housekeeping doesn't do that. They're better. Guests do sometimes when they pull it in quickly and let it swing dumb. I put it back on the door without letting it click. The magnet pulled true. The corridor air leaned toward the service stair as if the building had remembered a secret route. 0144. The West guest car arrived on 4 without a call and held its doors shy of anything useful, 2 fingers, no more. The shaft relay ticked like a slow metronome. Through wired glass I caught the side of the cab, stainless, empty, too clean. The car camera's lens wore a knee-height fog I'd wiped earlier. The fog had the courtesy to return. I wiped it again because cameras like giving you chores. I kept offset from 417's peephole, half body, not full, so its fisheye would only get an outline if anyone cared. I cupped my ear near the door without touching it. It's a trick you learn. Your ear can feel pressure changes your cheek would kill. For 2 seconds the sweep breathed in instead of out, a tiny inhale like a room making space for a new answer. Then stillness, on purpose. 0146. The service-only lamp glowed again, longer, count of 3, and the car did its polite non-arrival. The door edges kissed and separated a hair as if rubber had learned a preference for shoulders. The car's fan changed pitch, then corrected itself. The service corridor had its own weather under the door, a thin thread at ankle level that hadn't been there at midnight. The camera slice that covers this weird little T intersection, the one you have to lean to read, went good in the way that sets teeth on edge. No shimmer, no edge, ghosts. A brochure of a hallway at exactly the minute my notes would later need an ugly picture. I clipped the window anyway. Too perfect is still a kind of evidence. I drifted to 419 because you learn a whole floor better by checking what isn't weird. Handle slack, then firm. Deadlatch, honest. DND magnet, correct. Carpet pile told me nothing except that a vacuum owns this place more than people do. Back at 417, the reader stayed quiet long enough to feel like it had decided to behave. Then the stair talked. It wasn't a footfall. It was the tiny kiss a closer makes when someone eases a door until the sweep just brushes tile. A half-breath of cool rode my sleeves. Down the well, a hinge settled with the patience of someone who had practiced being an absence. The sound arrived late and more honest for the delay. I let it pass through me the way you let a wave finish a sentence. I didn't open the stair door. Policy says don't. Experience says a door that's trying to be polite will turn into a test if you give it weight. Instead, I took 2 soft steps toward the service corridor and set my palm a half-inch from the jamb. Metal keeps secrets. Air tells on it. Warm from chest height down, cooler at my wrist, a little thread of movement at my ankle. Something behind that door had had a body near it 5 minutes ago, and less of a body now. 0149, the landline downstairs flashed, line in use again, embarrassed, then stopped. I let it. My radio stayed on my shoulder the way you keep a dog at heel when a street gets interesting. There's a tone you use when you call dispatch and don't want to start a thing you can't finish. I didn't use it yet. I put my knuckles to the supplies latch again, warm. The push-button cap's all straight, except that one. If you've ever watched someone pick a push-button lock with a paperclip and patience, you know why one plastic cap learns to sit a hair lower than its friends. We never teach it. People learn it anyway. The guest corridor gave me one other small truth. The peephole at 417 rotated a quarter turn in its ring when I brushed it with a sleeve. Could have been me. Could have been alignment mark paint deciding to flake. Could have been a finger from the other side convincing the world to go blurry for a minute earlier. I didn't put it in the report yet. I put it in the drawer in my head with things you can't show someone in daylight. 152. The west car did its 2-finger door again, decided against opening, and sighed itself back into stillness. The service-only lamp pulsed without permission. The service car fan spun up, then down, then up, like a throat practicing. In the silence between those sounds, I heard fabric whisper against painted metal from a place a person shouldn't be, riser space, or the narrow void behind the service panel. Not movement, redistribution. The way a careful person becomes smaller without leaving. I gave the building one polite sentence, quiet enough not to be drama. Front desk is available by phone. I didn't say I can hear you. Nobody did me the favor of ringing. I took a step to the side so 417's fisheye would catch the edge of my shoulder and the badge lanyard, not my eyes. A lot of people can live with a shoulder. Eye contact through glass is a contract you can't write about later. The reader stayed dark. The deadlatch stayed honest under my nail. I breathed shallow enough to make my ribs complain. 0154. Downstairs, the PMS printed a live audit line I hadn't asked for, which is how you learn the printer has an ego. The panel showed no calls placed, no door events, no service car movement. The building kept acting out, and the paper kept claiming it wasn't at the theatre. I did one small, allowed test, set a folded breakfast ticket on the hallway carpet, an inch off 417's threshold. Not near the sweep, not a trip, just light enough to become a flag if air decided to practice. Then I took 5 steps back and waited. You learn patience from elevators. You learn restraint from doors. A minute, then 2. The ticket trembled once as the corridor HVAC cycled and then lay calm. The service-only lamp stayed a thought instead of a decision. The car made that little settle it makes when it's sharing weight with a floor it isn't opening for. Somewhere down the stair, a tread sang a high note from a bad repair, and then didn't sing it again. I called it in, finally, because you don't get to pick when a story becomes work. Front desk to dispatch, holding 4. Repeated green flash at 4:17 with no actuation. Service car lamp momentary. Closet latch warm. Line in use, false positives. No guest contact, no alarm. The operator gave me the voice reserved for nights that want to be polite and won't. Copy. Continue to observe. Supervisor 10 out. 10 minutes is long when a hallway is making eye contact. I didn't open, I didn't chase. I wrote the minute, the warmth, the lamp. I let the building breathe around the decision it had almost made, and then unmade. Then, a 157 found my soft spot. The service car leveled like a promise. The doors parted exactly a coin's width and held. In the thin seam of stainless you can sometimes see an outline if someone is too close to their own reflection. I saw nothing I could swear to. What I felt was older than paperwork, the sense of a person choosing to be a shape instead of a face. I kept my voice even. "If you belong," I said to the seam, "ring down." The desk phone stayed a sleepwalker. The line-in-use lamp flickered like an apology and went dark. On my way back to the desk, I checked the folded ticket by 4/17's threshold without breaking stride. It had rotated a 1/4 inch. The sweep hadn't moved. The air had. The next sound I heard was the stair deciding to be helpful for someone who wasn't me. It breathed out, not loud, not long, just enough to turn my sleeves, and below that breath, metal kissed metal the way a latch says we're finished here without making a scene. "O2, all sorrowed." I gave him a different song, keys out of the nested pocket so they could talk once, a little too loud, the way a rookie would. I let the guest elevator chime on 5 while I stayed on 4 and listened for who believed the chime. The service car answered instead. No bell, just that soft level set a car makes when it shares weight with a floor and refuses to open. 4/17's reader stayed quiet, modest as a witness who knows better than to look helpful. I set myself partly behind the corner so the peephole would get badge lanyard and shoulder, not eyes. Across the hall, the supplies door warmed the way a secret does when it adopts you for a minute. Latch a shade above room temperature, hinge still cool. The draft at my ankles had learned a route. O2's O2, the service. Only lamp glowed a 3 count. The doors parted a coin's width and kissed shut like good manners. I moved when they moved, but sideways into the service corridor instead of toward the gap, debt collector pace. The air back there had a memory, lemon cleaner, cardboard dust, the sugar film left over from breakfast syrup. The floor transitions from guest carpet to thin, low-pile runner left a faint drag line I wouldn't have noticed yesterday. 2 parallel scuffs the width of a housekeeping cart, beginning nowhere and ending at the stair door. No carts are issued at night. The badge closet on 3 keeps them honest. I took a photo that would later read like a photo of nothing. The stair decided to help someone who wasn't me. Hinges whispered in the way hinges learn to when someone has practiced being a rumor. I took the railing with 2 fingers, toes on tread edges so I wouldn't feed the well any echo. A landing down, the ghost of moisture where a shoe had changed its mind, a single dark fibre snagged in the stair nose, not long enough to be a thread, not plastic enough to be tape, cloth, synthetic, glove adjacent if you've handled enough nitrile. I didn't pick it. I logged fibre at stair nose, do not disturb, and let the well tell me where the breath wanted to travel. Up, not down. One landing ahead of me kept one landing ahead. He had the patience to be exactly my distance and no closer. I broke the mirror. I went up 2 flights fast, then stopped 1 short and let silence make a shape. He didn't take the bait. He took the service car instead. The service-only lamp lit a proud green I could feel at sleeve height. Doors parted a coin, refused to admit me, then eased closed with the rubber stainless kiss that makes good metals sound expensive. No call registered at my panel. The car learned my impatience and kept its place. 207, the desk landline flashed, line in use like a hand raised in class, and then pretended nothing had happened. The PMS claimed innocence. I looked at the camera wall we pretend is a friend. The slice covering 4 went museum still for exactly 90 seconds. No edge ghosts, no camera breath, brochure lighting. The window ended, and the picture remembered it was made of parts. I clipped the stillness anyhow. Too perfect is a symptom, even if it isn't a diagnosis. Back on 4, the folded breakfast ticket I'd laid an inch off 4117's threshold now sat cocked at a clean angle, 20 degrees like a compass test. The sweep hadn't moved, air had. I replaced it, edges squared to the carpet pattern, like a witness I could measure. I gave him a rookie tell. I rattled the master key ring, just once, then stopped the sound with my own throat so it wouldn't travel. The stair answered with stillness, which is a kind of laugh. The supplies push-button caps looked level, but the second from top sat that hair low you don't get without a favourite thumb. Warm at the latch, cool at the hinge. I didn't open. I don't open doors that are proud of keeping their own breath. Woe to 11, the guest car rode up to 7 with no call, and then forgot why it had left. The service-only lamp pulsed a 2 count. A housekeeping cart's bump registered in the back of my teeth, metal on drywall where the runner meets the wall. I turned the corner into the service corridor and saw the result, not the cause, a soft grey scuff exactly at bumper height, fresh in the paint. The drag lines I'd photographed had grown a foot to the stair door, no footprints, no rubber crumbs, just physics that had changed its mind. Front to dispatch, I said, even, not drama. Service corridor shows fresh scuff and drag lines consistent with cart movement. No carts should be on floor. Repeated service car partials. No calls logged. Holding 4. Dispatch gave me the bedtime tone. Copy. Supervisor 8 out. I ran the dummy patrol they taught me. Elevate the honest elevators. Ignore the liars. I called the west guest car to 5 and the east to 3, so that anyone who preferred shadow over chime would show me their preference. The service car levelled at 4 and did nothing with pride. Back at 417, the peephole gave me the same warped door across the hall and the same stripe of numbered carpet. The reader, LED, stayed dark. I pressed the deadlatch with a nail and got clean resistance. If someone had a key, they were playing with the idea of doors, not doors themselves. Though 215. The stair one landing below told a small truth with a tool, sound locksmiths know. The breathe and kiss a latch gives when a thin piece of spring steel asks it to be kind, not a scrape. A yes. Air changed a finger's width along my sleeves, running outward as the door closed itself without pride. I didn't chase. I held the hinge with my shoulder just hard enough to learn temperature. Cooler now. A body had been close and had decided to become an absence. I moved the long way to cut him off. Up the guest hall to the opposite side of the service lobby, a slow arc that kept me out of peepholes and into angles the camera cone can't scold. The service-only lamp glowed as I arrived, and through the coin-width seam I caught exactly what careful people leave, not a face, not a hand, just the shadow of a cart handle crossing stainless, slow, deliberate, a shape that knew how to be a hint. I set my palm an inch off the seam and spoke low. If you're staff, I said, you can show a badge. The seam cooled. The lamp went dark. The car fan stopped pretending to be a person. 0218. The folded ticket at 417 had pivoted again, same 20 degrees the other way, as if someone had learned the angle of my test and wanted to put it back polite. The DND magnet on 419 stayed where I'd corrected it. The push-button caps stayed straight. The latch held its little warmth like a secret it hadn't decided to share with me. I took one risk I could defend later. I keyed the guest car and rode it up one floor, then walked the back stair down fast and quiet to be the landing ahead for once. The stair gave me its answer. He kept his distance, one landing between us like a metronome you can't catch. When I stopped completely, he stopped completely. When I breathed shallow, the well forgot me. When I leaned on curiosity, the well fed someone else. Woe 222, the service. Only lamp gave me its longest glow, nearly 5 seconds, and the doors parted to the coin's width that feels personal when you've stared at doors too long. I angled my body so the peephole on 417 would catch a shoulder and a lanyard and not my eyes. I lifted my radio just enough to make the present sound people who practice listen for. The seam stayed seam. The lamp went dark. Downstairs, the landline threw line in use one more time like a child learning please. I let it have its manners. The PMS never lit. The printer decided to spit one unnecessary test line and then remembered to be furniture. Paper stayed good while the hallway tried on lies. Woe 2.25, the service corridor offered me one last breadcrumb, a thin, straight gouge in the paint at hip height, where a cart's wheel bracket kisses walls after someone removes the rubber bumper ring. Housekeeping leaves the rings on, they know better. This mark belonged to a cart that had been taught a new personality. I took a picture that wouldn't help anyone later and wrote hip height, cart gouge, fresh, because adjectives don't like us. I called it in a second time because the clock makes cowards of us and saints of policy. Front to dispatch, recommending supervisor expedite, service car partials continue, probable unauthorized cart movement between service corridor and stair. No guest contact, no alarms. Copy, she said, and her voice decided to be awake now. Unit 5 out. I didn't run. Running teaches buildings the wrong lesson. I did what the job pays you to do when pride wants the wheel. I watched and wrote. The next 90 seconds gave me the same brochure of a hallway on the DVR, the same mannequin window at exactly the minute I would need a floor. The ticket by 417 twitched at another HVAC sigh, and then settled. The supplies latch cooled a degree and forgot me. Woe 228. The stair offered its last opinion of the hour, a careful exhale out of the well, not much, just enough to turn my sleeves. The sound underneath, metal touching metal with no hurry, was a latch keeping a promise to close. And when the supervisor's steps finally started up from the lobby, honest rubber on tile, the service-only lamp chose that moment to behave perfectly, and 4 turned into a picture of a place where nothing interesting had ever happened. The supervisor came up from the lobby with the honest rubber-on-tile rhythm buildings respect. He didn't ask for adjectives, he asked for clocks. I walked him through the minutes. So 123, 26, 33, green LED on 417 with no handle. 0129, 36, service car partials, line in use with no PMS record, drag lines in the service corridor, cart height gouge in fresh paint. He nodded like a man loading shelves. We did the sweep first because bodies want jobs. 4 stayed brochure still. The folded breakfast ticket I'd squared beside 417 had pivoted a polite 20 degrees and learned how to look innocent. The supplies latch had cooled from warm to room. The service-only lamp behaved like a saint. That's how knights decide to be brave once everyone arrives. Down at the desk, paper began to argue with air. Door log 417. No valid access at 01:23:26:33. No denied either. 3 earlier tests from my shift were present. My handle checks log as privacy latch test on this system. The controller showed a total event count 3 higher than the printed list. Telling after doing, the contractor had called that at another site. The supervisor underlined count +3, no entries, and didn't smile. Key safe. Green. Last door, 2358 audit. Openings. Mine at shift start, then none. Envelope, spare master. Crease and 2 initials, seal, number, true. We popped the lid with the dual code so his eyes could have what his hands already knew. Keys were present, accountancy perfect, my nerves unimpressed. Housekeeping carts, badge closet on 3, logged no exits after 21. Cart inventory sheet showed all 4 signed in by day shift. Upstairs, there was a drag line in the runner and a gouge at hip height that belonged to a cart with its rubber bumper ring removed. So either a 5th cart, he said, or someone staged one before close. His face didn't like either sentence. Service elevator, car computer. Said no hall, calls received from 01:20 or 2:30, no inspection mode, no nudge faults. Yet the status page showed level at 4 separate times within those minutes. The door open counter had advanced twice. Doors closed on obstruction, he offered, but his voice put the period in the wrong place. My notes read level events, no calls, door count, +2, phone records, PBX line seized twice at 01:27 and 01:31, no extension ID. PMS call report, empty. The handset had been warm when I lifted. Analog, he said, as if that explained how silence can have a pulse. We put line C's, W's and no X'd in the log anyway, because reports like nouns, not feelings. Cameras, we pulled the slice that matters. For the 90-second windows bracketing each reader blink, 4 looked too perfect. No edge shimmer, no bitrate ghosts in corners, motion smoothing itself into a brochure. 5 minutes before and after, the camera breathed like cameras do. The supervisor didn't say edited. He traced the rectangle with a pen cap and said, window, like naming it would make it behave. Front desk printer. My live audit line at 01:54 shouldn't have rolled when it did. Batch wasn't scheduled. The PMS log said no user action. He looked at the little test line the machine had spit and said nothing at all. Printers misbehave, that's their job. But the minute mattered and we both knew it. Back up on 4, we let the hallway tell on itself. The supplies push buttons sat level, except the second from top that carried a favourite thumb's memory, a hair lower than its neighbours. The latch metal was room temp again. The D&D magnet on 419 stayed where I'd corrected it. Its twin adhesive shadow on the frame still looked wrong, like a whisper that had tried to live on painted steel. On the stair between 4 and 3, the supervisor crouched and pointed with his pen to the stair nose where I'd held off earlier. The tiny dark fibre, not hair, not dust, caught his light. He lifted it with a bit of hotel tape onto a blank index card, the way people who have learned not to be embarrassed by small truths do. Bag it, he said to himself, and to me, and to a morning we hadn't arrived at yet. We checked 417, the only way policy allows. No entry, no handle. He cupped the peephole with his palm without touching glass, just close enough to learn heat. Cool. He looked at the ring and the alignment paint, old, flaky, maybe rotated a quarter turn, maybe not. Don't write it unless you can own it, he said. I didn't. He ran fingers along the strike. Screws were flush. He pressed the deadlatch with a thumbnail and got the honest resistance I'd gotten. We both listened for the tiny, throat-clear doors make after being given a key. Nothing. That was the worst part. A door that had just told us welcome 3 times stood there practicing no like a prayer. We pushed the car closet door, guest side, not backside, with 0 pressure, just enough to watch the supplies sign breathe. Air moved ankle high toward the stair, then stopped as if corrected by a teacher. The push buttons looked dumb. The tape on the frame edge wore a clean nick at knee height where something had kissed metal this week. "Document," he said. I took the photo I knew would look like furniture. In the service corridor, he noticed what I'd missed. 2 parallel lines in the dust at floor level a foot apart, wheel tracks without tread marks. "Rubber off," he said, as if we were in a shop, not a hotel. He matched the fresh gouge on the wall to the height of his own hip and shook his head. Someone's proud of not leaving crumbs. By 0240, the hallway's patience had become a performance. The service-only lamp stayed dark. The landline stopped flirting with line in use. The camera rediscovered its bad habits, edge ghosts, a little shimmer when the air handler coughed. Everything that had taught me new words an hour ago decided to study silence instead. The supervisor signed the line that wants a signature and wrote "Review Vendor" in neat block letters, which is how we say, "We don't like being made dumb by plastic." He looked down the service corridor one more time and then said the only sentence that belongs in a hallway that thinks it's smarter than you. "We're not opening anything tonight." I didn't argue. I wanted a screwdriver like a thirst. Instead, I kept my hand on the rail, the way you touch a dog you're not sure likes you, and let the building decide whether it would own this story or loan it to paper. At 0252, the West guest car arrived on 4 without a call and stayed shut like a person who knows when to keep a face. The camera breathed the way cameras should. The ticket by 417 stayed square. The supplies sign didn't lift at all. The stair well cooled. That's how contradictions end their shift, not with a fix, just with a room deciding it's finished having a personality. We walked back to the desk without chasing the last inch of proof. The supervisor called engineering and the lock vendor for the morning, and dispatch for a quiet follow. Section 6 starts when the people who own tools bigger than ours come to argue with manners. Morning put collars on the night. The on-call manager came in with the polite face people wear when they hope the building is just being dramatic. Engineering followed with a tool bag and the smell of coffee that wants a fight. We walked them through the minutes like rungs on a ladder. Row 1, 23, 26, 33 green without handle, service car partials, line in use with no record, drag lines, cart gouge, camera windows that behave too well. "Start with what can lie," the manager said. So we did. Lock vendor showed at 0912 carrying a programmer tablet and a handful of mortise parts the color of old nickels. He asked for 417 like a doctor asking for a pulse he expects to find. The door's reader blinked its innocent red, then obeyed his service baton. The lock dumped its memory into his tablet with the little chirp people trust because it sounds like progress. He scrolled. "No valid at your times, no invalid either." He tapped a different screen. "Controller total is 3 higher than entries listed." He didn't like that, and he didn't like liking it. He popped the inside escutcheon and showed me 3 sensors with names that pretend to be simple: latch, bolt, privacy. Green dots went to grey and back as he worked the handle. "LED won't go green without this board thinking it heard a yes," he said. "But a yes that doesn't write to event memory, that's not a feature. Not." We checked the read on the frame, tiny glass tube that's either sleeping or singing. "Storm magnets make chatter," he offered, more to prove he'd said the line than because a storm had anything to do with last night. He pulled the battery carrier, checked the date code, showed me contact pads clean enough to eat off. "Low voltage gives you sluggishness, not politeness." He watched me press the deadlatch with a thumbnail until it gave that honest resistance. "This isn't the trick," he said, and his finger tapped the inside lever lightly, like a man greeting an old friend he didn't entirely trust. If someone spoofed the reader itself, you'd still get a line in memory, even if it's gibberish. This is count without confession. He printed that phrase onto the work order because work orders forgive poetry if the nouns are right. He loaded firmware like a priest changing water, set the LED test so green without open throws a tantrum in logs, and dabbed paint eyes across 2 screws so any midnight screwdriver would have to shave pride to hide pride. He left with the line vendors leave when they don't want to marry your problem. Call if it repeats. Elevator tech came next, toolbox that clanked like punctuation. He hooked a service laptop to the car's controller and frowned at numbers that appeared comfortable with themselves. Hall calls received, none, he read. Car calls, none. Level at 4 times. He looked at me like it was a joke we both had to be in on. Door cycles count 2 within your window, but I don't have a command for those cycles. Reopened sensor might have seen a ghost and done a courtesy pinchback. He said ghost like a troubleshooting term, not a superstition. I asked about doors parting a coin's width. He pulled the nudging menu and showed me settings that nudge doors harder if they've been kept too sweet by polite people. These were never in service mode, he added, in case I needed to sleep later. He replaced the edge sensor, not because it was wrong, but because faces were watching him, and set a tight trace on every time that car so much as thought about 4. The manager initialed it like initials could teach steel to tell the truth. PBX, the phone contractor, dialed in remote, listened like a doctor to a chest through a stethoscope he didn't believe in, and declared, line C's observed, no extension registered, probable switch hook bounce. Analog, the supervisor said again, like a benediction that absolves handsets of their sins. I mentioned handset warm at 0127. The PBX man hummed a vowel and put replace lobby set on a dispatch for the afternoon, which is how you turn philosophy into labor. Cameras, engineering's part. Our in-house tech is the kind who listens to cable trays with his palm like he's hearing songs. He rolled the NVR back through the night and paused on my problem rectangles. That, he said, tapping the too perfect window, is either a bit rate cap that hit exactly when you didn't need it to, or someone told this channel to behave. He didn't like either sentence. He pulled a separate raw stream from the camera itself, bypassing the recorder, and in that raw he found breath, edge shimmer, tiny compression ghosts, exactly where the NVR had given me a brochure. Recorder's smoothing, he decided, and moved channel 4 to its own profile with no smoothing and a slightly ugly life. He printed a label and stuck it on the bay like a charm against polite lies. We went back upstairs with our new little gods installed. Engineering carried tamper seals, ugly, brittle, numbered. One went across the supplies closet's edge where my knuckles had found warmth. He penned the seal number into a book, the way numbers can be made to sit still. He stuck witness tape, hairline thin, along the frame and pressed it hard with a thumbnail to raise a tiny tooth no one could put back if they didn't know where to look. He put paint dots at the hinge screws the way my other side had. I took comfort in the fact that paint doesn't lie, it just flakes honestly. Housekeeping did their part, which is to say they counted carts like mothers count their kids. 4 in the closet with their bumper rings happy, none unaccounted. Engineering rolled each one out and measured the gouge height in the service corridor against the only cart that had an old missing ring note in its maintenance log. No match. The mark on the wall sat a half-inch lower than any of our carts. Either a 5th cart had toured our floor, or someone had bracketed a ring off and put it back like a man straightening his tie before a meeting. We found no rings stashed in the janitor's sink, We found nothing where we needed a thing. We looked at 417's peephole in daylight because pride wanted something to change. Alignment paint around the ring looked rubbed a hair on one side. Could have been me last night, could have been years, could have been a person who knows the old trick with a pinned lens and a bent paperclip. The manager's face said, "Don't write it unless you can bet your job on it." I didn't write it. He did what managers can do that the rest of us can't. He pulled key audits dressed for court. Master ring, my safe, clean. Spare envelope, seal true, number matched. Crease, still a crease. Engineering's passkey log, clean. Housekeeping's watch keys, present, unlucky charms. He made one call to a name I don't get in my phone and asked the question you don't want to be the one to ask. Any temp staff last week who could have been here after hours? The pause wasn't long, but it lived a lifetime. "Copy," he said finally, and wrote no as if he didn't earn the right to write maybe. Before he left, the lock vendor put down one last piece of religion. He showed me LED test mode in the programmer and toggled it so green flashes without actuation would knock a special tamper bit in memory. "If you see green again and it still refuses to confess," he said, "it isn't the lock." He looked at the frame when he said it, like the world we mount hardware to might be the traitor. We ate the part of the day called normal and let email wash over the thing we'd actually done. The report that went upstairs was the kind the building can live with. No unauthorized party located, vendor updated firmware, elevator edge replaced, recorder profile adjusted, seals applied, additional monitoring in place. It ended with the sentence managers love more than coffee, site secure. The hallway didn't sign that paper, it just waited. At 18:57, while day shift was explaining our night like it was a movie they'd half watched, 4 lit on the guest indicator and stayed there with no call. Engineering's trace caught a level, the door count did not move. The NVR wrote ugly, honest video. The supplies seal number still matched itself. The witness tape tooth hadn't broken. The pencil tick under the stair sweep sat where my thumbnail had left it. We had rebuilt the instruments. The song hadn't changed. "Okay," the manager said, softer than earlier, like a person who knows what patience costs. "Next weekend, same team, same hours. You," to me, "change your route. If it's craft, it'll try to learn you again." He let insider sit between us without air. I took the night back the way a person takes a corner, slow enough to see the ditch, fast enough to feel like you have a say. The building emptied itself of daylight voices. The service-only lamp learned shyness. The peephole at 417 became a dot that could be a story if it wanted. The seal on supplies looked ugly and sure of itself. The receipt by the threshold looked like nothing. The pencil tick under the sweep looked like a joke no one would laugh at later. And when 0112 came on the weekend, 417 blinked green again, just once, like a wink. Someone couldn't stop themselves from giving, and the programmer in my pocket didn't get a tamper bit to comfort me. That's when I knew Section 7 was going to be about returning alone and changing the song until the hallway either sang with me or admitted it had learned the words first. Morning put collars on the night. The on-call manager came in with the polite face people wear when they hope the building is just being dramatic. Engineering followed with a tool bag and the smell of coffee that wants a fight. We walked them through the minutes like rungs on a ladder. Row 1, 23, 26, 33 green without handle, service car partials, line in use with no record, drag lines, cart gouge, camera windows that behave too well. "Start with what can lie," the manager said. So we did. Lock vendor showed at 0912 carrying a programmer tablet and a handful of mortise parts the color of old nickels. He asked for 417 like a doctor asking for a pulse he expects to find. The door's reader blinked its innocent red, then obeyed his service baton. The lock dumped its memory into his tablet with the little chirp people trust because it sounds like progress. He scrolled. No valid at your times, no invalid either. He tapped a different screen. Controller total is 3 higher than entries listed. He didn't like that, and he didn't like liking it. He popped the inside escutcheon and showed me 3 sensors with names that pretend to be simple: latch, bolt, privacy. Green dots went to grey and back as he worked the handle. LED won't go green without this board thinking it heard a yes, he said. But a yes that doesn't write to event memory, that's not a feature. Not. We checked the read on the frame, tiny glass tube that's either sleeping or singing. Storm magnets make chatter, he offered, more to prove he'd said the line than because a storm had anything to do with last night. He pulled the battery carrier, checked the date code, showed me contact pads clean enough to eat off. Low voltage gives you sluggishness, not politeness. He watched me press the deadlatch with a thumbnail until it gave that honest resistance. This isn't the trick, he said, and his finger tapped the inside lever lightly, like a man greeting an old friend he didn't entirely trust. If someone spoofed the reader itself, you'd still get a line in memory, even if it's gibberish. This is count without confession. He printed that phrase onto the work order because work orders forgive poetry if the nouns are right. He loaded firmware like a priest changing water, set the LED test so green without open throws a tantrum in logs, and dabbed paint eyes across 2 screws so any midnight screwdriver would have to shave pride to hide pride. He left with the line vendors leave when they don't want to marry your problem. Call if it repeats. Elevator tech came next, toolbox that clanked like punctuation. He hooked a service laptop to the car's controller and frowned at numbers that appeared comfortable with themselves. Hall calls received none, he read. Car calls none, level at 4 times. He looked at me like it was a joke we both had to be in on. Door cycles count 2 within your window, but I don't have a command for those cycles. Reopen sensor might have seen a ghost and done a courtesy pinchback. He said ghost like a troubleshooting term, not a superstition. I asked about doors parting a coin's width. He pulled the nudging menu and showed me settings that nudge doors harder if they've been kept too sweet by polite people. These were never in service mode, he added, in case I needed to sleep later. He replaced the edge sensor, not because it was wrong, but because faces were watching him, and set a tight trace on every time that car so much as thought about 4. The manager initialed it like initials could teach steel to tell the truth. PBX, the phone contractor, dialed in remote, listened like a doctor to a chest through a stethoscope he didn't believe in, and declared, line C's observed, no extension registered, probable switch hook bounce. Analog, the supervisor said again, like a benediction that absolves handsets of their sins. I mentioned handset warm at 0127. The PBX man hummed a vowel and put replace lobby set on a dispatch for the afternoon, which is how you turn philosophy into labor. Cameras, engineering's part. Our in-house tech is the kind who listens to cable trays with his palm like he's hearing songs. He rolled the NVR back through the night and paused on my problem rectangles. That, he said, tapping the too perfect window, is either a bit rate cap that hit exactly when you didn't need it to, or someone told this channel to behave. He didn't like either sentence. He pulled a separate raw stream from the camera itself, bypassing the recorder, and in that raw he found breath, edge shimmer, tiny compression ghosts, exactly where the NVR had given me a brochure. Recorder's smoothing, he decided, and moved Channel 4 to its own profile with no smoothing and a slightly ugly life. He printed a label and stuck it on the bay like a charm against polite lies. We went back upstairs with our new little gods installed. Engineering carried tamper seals, ugly, brittle, numbered, One went across the supplies closet's edge where my knuckles had found warmth. He penned the seal number into a book, the way numbers can be made to sit still. He stuck witness tape, hairline thin, along the frame and pressed it hard with a thumbnail to raise a tiny tooth no one could put back if they didn't know where to look. He put paint dots at the hinge screws the way my other side had. I took comfort in the fact that paint doesn't lie, it just flakes honestly. Housekeeping did their part, which is to say they counted carts like mothers count their kids. 4 in the closet with their bumper rings happy, none unaccounted. Engineering rolled each one out and measured the gouge height in the service corridor against the only cart that had an old missing ring note in its maintenance log. No match. The mark on the wall sat a half-inch lower than any of our carts. Either a 5th cart had toured our floor, or someone had bracketed a ring off and put it back like a man straightening his tie before a meeting. We found no rings stashed in the janitor's sink. We found nothing where we needed a thing. We looked at 417's peephole in daylight because pride wanted something to change. Alignment paint around the ring looked rubbed a hair on one side. Could have been me last night, could have been years, could have been a person who knows the old trick with a pinned lens and a bent paperclip. The manager's face said, "Don't write it unless you can bet your job on it." I didn't write it. He did what managers can do that the rest of us can't. He pulled key audits dressed for court. Master ring, my safe, clean. Spare envelope, seal true, number matched. Crease, still a crease. Engineering's passkey log, clean. Housekeeping's watch keys, present, unlucky charms. He made one call to a name I don't get in my phone and asked the question you don't want to be the one to ask. Any temp staff last week who could have been here after hours? The pause wasn't long, but it lived a lifetime. "Copy," he said finally, and wrote no as if he didn't earn the right to write maybe. Before he left, the lock vendor put down one last piece of religion. He showed me LED test mode in the programmer and toggled it so green flashes without actuation would knock a special tamper bit in memory. "If you see green again and it still refuses to confess," he said, "it isn't the lock." He looked at the frame when he said it, like the world we mount hardware to might be the traitor. We ate the part of the day called normal and let email wash over the thing we'd actually done. The report that went upstairs was the kind the building can live with. No unauthorized party located, vendor updated firmware, elevator edge replaced, recorder profile adjusted, seals applied, additional monitoring in place. It ended with the sentence managers love more than coffee, site secure. The hallway didn't sign that paper, it just waited. At 18:57, while day shift was explaining our night like it was a movie they'd half-watched, 4 lit on the guest indicator and stayed there with no call. Engineering's trace caught a level, the door count did not move. The NVR wrote ugly, honest video. The supplies seal number still matched itself. The witness tape tooth hadn't broken. The pencil tick under the stair sweep sat where my thumbnail had left it. We had rebuilt the instruments. The song hadn't changed. "Okay," the manager said, softer than earlier, like a person who knows what patience costs. "Next weekend, same team, same hours. You," to me, "change your route. If it's craft, it'll try to learn you again." He let insider sit between us without air. I took the night back the way a person takes a corner, slow enough to see the ditch, fast enough to feel like you have a say. The building emptied itself of daylight voices. The service-only lamp learned shyness. The peephole at 417 became a dot that could be a story if it wanted. The seal on supplies looked ugly and sure of itself. The receipt by the threshold looked like nothing. The pencil tick under the sweep looked like a joke no one would laugh at later. And when 0112 came on the weekend, 417 blinked green again, just once, like a wink someone couldn't stop themselves from giving, and the programmer in my pocket didn't get a tamper bit to comfort me. That's when I knew Section 7 was going to be about returning alone and changing the song until the hallway either sang with me or admitted it had learned the words first. The next weekend they put me back on the map alone by design. Same tools, new rules, shift my lap by 7 minutes, stagger floors, break every pattern I'd left in the carpet. Engineering's pencil tick still lived under the stair sweep. The ugly seal on supplies still wore its number. Camera 4 wrote ugly, honest truth now. The desk handset had been swapped and sulked like furniture. The service car trace logged every time Steele thought the word 4. I started wrong on purpose. West guest car to 7, ride to 9, walk down to 8, then take the back stair to 6, and listen through a door I didn't open. Concrete keeps score. The well held its breath like a student who wants the test to end. 4 didn't call me, I went anyway. The receipt flag I'd squared 1 inch off 4/17's threshold still faced the carpet pattern like an obedient witness. The reader's LED sat red and reasonable. I pressed the deadlatch with a nail, honest resistance. The peephole showed its warped version of the opposite door, and the tiny crescent of missing alignment paint I'd pretended not to see, last time, looked rubbed a hair more, not proof. Enough to bother a person who keeps lists. 01:08. The service car's fan woke, spun, stopped. The service-only lamp pulsed once, shy. No call on the panel. The trace later would show level over 4, 01812, doors. My sleeves learned a degree of cool toward the service corridor like a teacher running a finger under a line I should read. I moved to the supplies door and let air talk. The seal was intact, ugly and proud, but the hinge side gave me a slow, almost there, inhale at ankle level. The push-button caps sat straight as saints. I put the back of my knuckles to the latch. Room temp. No warm metal alibi tonight. It felt like a face wiping itself clean. 112. 417's LED went green, a soft, polite blink that made my molars count. No handle, no latch. I held my breath and watched it end. The programmer app in my pocket was set to scream if green without actuation knocked the tamper bit the vendor added. Nothing pinged. The lock hadn't confessed to itself. Either I saw a self-test at the meanest possible minute, or something coaxed the reader into a courtesy it refused to own on paper. I didn't touch the handle. I let the hallway decide who it liked. The service-only lamp glowed again, a 2 count, doors parting a coin's width with the trace, later insisting that doors never moved. You can hate numbers and still admire their confidence. I changed the song. West car to 3, east to 10, then nothing for 2 minutes, while I stood where the peephole would only get a shoulder and a lanyard. The stair kept its distance, one landing above or below. I couldn't tell which, the well choosing to be a rumour. I set a second paper flag on the service side, not near a sweep, half a loyalty card at shin height, curved along the jamb, light enough to whisper if the door made a face at me. The desk phone in the lobby stayed honest. No line-in-use theatre. The new camera angle we'd added, covering more of the T where guest hall meets service, wrote honest ugliness. Edge, shimmer, small bitrate ghosts in corners, a flicker when the air handler cleared its throat. I liked it more than I like some people. 0118, a tiny kiss in the stair, the sound spring steel makes when it asks a latch to be reasonable, not scrape, cooperation. Pressure ran along my sleeves from stair to hall. The supplies seal did not break. The tooth we'd pressed into the witness tape at the frame edge did not shave. But the loyalty card flag curled a millimeter, then settled, like a person who almost says something and decides to wait. I didn't chase. I pivoted into the service corridor and gave myself the kind of flashlight beam that respects corners. Floor runner, 2 faint drag lines the width of a housekeeping cart. Last week's gouge at hip height in the paint, visible, old new. Tonight, a second, shorter, scuff one door closer to the stair. Fresh, chalky grey, not yet resigned to being a wall. Badge closet on 3, still insisted no exits after 21. Either a fifth cart existed in ideas only, or someone had de-ringed ours, rolled it, then dressed it back up before morning head counts. Practice, not magic. 0121, the service car levelled on 4 with all the manners in the world and none of the paperwork. Trace, level, 4, 121.3, doors, 0. The service-only lamp didn't flash. The car's fan made the small adjustment a person makes before clearing their throat. I set my palm an inch off the seam and talked to air. "If you're staff," I said, steady, "you can show a badge." The seam forgot to be interesting and cooled by a finger. Back at 417, the receipt flag was not where I had squared it. It had pivoted 15 degrees clockwise like a compass that wants to be polite. The sweep hadn't moved. The carpet under the flag held a slightly darker print the shape of the paper's arc. Air had chosen its sentence and borrowed my punctuation. I put the flag back square and took one small liberty the manager would forgive. I marked a dot with a pencil in the pattern just outside the door, small as a freckle, hiding inside the weave. If paper moved, the dot would teach me humility or give me comfort. Paint dots on screws are for vendors, carpet dots are for us. 0127, the camera caught what the NVR couldn't lie about anymore. 2 frames where the seam of the service car showed a rectangular shadow crossing, cart handle height, then nothing. Not a face, not a hand. A shape that understood it was allowed to be a hint. The trace argued the doors never moved. I took the frames anyway. Sometimes a contradiction is the only thing that looks like truth. I gave him a rookie tell, keys loud once, then silence. He answered by being better at quiet than I am. The stair gave me a tread note one landing down, the bad repairs high, thin ping, and then learned not to make it again. That's how you recognize practice, not absence of sound, but the ability to spend it wisely. 0131, I touched 417's deadlatch with a nail. Seated. I touched the strike screws. Flush. I held my ear half an inch from the peephole glass without letting skin give it heat. Rooms tell you when they've been looked through recently. Glass doors breath longer than people think. Cool. But the ring did a small thing I can't make pretty for a report. When a movement far down the hall shifted air, the peephole's loose pin clicked a sound glass shouldn't make. Not rotation. A settle. Old hardware that had been persuaded once too often. 0133. The supplies seal still read its number like a hymn. The tooth on the witness tape, unshaved. The latch, cool. And yet, the anvil's smell of cardboard and lemon cleaner coming through at ankle height grew a hair stronger, as if the closet had practiced breathing. I called dispatch with nouns and clocks, holding 4. LED green 0112, no tamper bit, service level events, WO calls, cart traces on runner, paper flag displacement, stair tool kiss at 18. The operator's voice shed bedtime. Copy, Unit 5 in 20, continue to observe, advise if front entry cycles. We'd learned that lesson from another building. Glass opens politely when a story ends. 0136. The guest west car arrived on 4 without a call and held doors exactly 2 fingers. The edge sensor we'd replaced did its job. It wanted to reopen, didn't. I took the invitation, stepped in, held door open with a thumb so the trace would have something honest to chew. Nothing moved in the corridor except the bent edge of my receipt flag turning itself back a degree as the air handler sighed. The elevator doors closed on me like a mouth finished talking. I rode to 5, walked the back stair down quiet to be the landing ahead for once. He matched distance like a partner in a dance. When I stopped completely for 20 seconds, he spent sound on one step, then paid it back with stillness. When I faked a fast descent, he chose the service car. The trace stamped level 4, 013911, doors, row. The service-only lamp stayed too dignified to gossip. A 142 new small truth, a smudge at knee-height on the guest west car's cabin lens, fog pattern I had wiped at 4.15, returned with the same thumbprint geometry. I wiped it again and took a picture of the nothing I made. Machines love making you tidy your fear, or 144. The receipt flag by 417 rotated counterclockwise to its earlier tilt, like someone trying to be polite about my test. The hair-sized pencil dot in the carpet pattern I'd made sat a millimetre off where I'd left it, blurrier, as if fibres had lifted and set down again. That dot is not admissible in anyone's court, but mine, it still did its job. Low 147, the stair, exhaled a private opinion, 2 landings down. The well-moved air along my sleeves in a way I now trust more than logs. I put my shoulder to the hinge of the service door, just enough to learn its temperature. Cool. Honest. Behind it, a person learning to be less than a person shifted weight, the cloth-on-painted metal sound that belongs to riser space and regret. I didn't open. We'd promised each other not to open. I did the small brave thing you can defend later. I scraped a fresh pencil tick across the underside of the sweep and noted the time, 01:48. If the door went anywhere, it would shave pride. If it stayed, the world would be ugly and intact. No 151. The camera caught motion where I've never once gotten a face, the shadow of a wheel bracket, hip height, crossing the service corridor seam and pausing as if listening, then gone. The runner drag lines lengthened half a foot toward the stair. The badge closet on 3 still claimed no exits. Numbers don't blush when they're lying. 154. The elevator trace showed level 4 again. Doors. 0. My body started to learn the same anger you get when a smoke detector chirps at 2 a.m. and the battery drawer says full. I breathed like my supervisor had taught me, 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out, 4 wait, and let the building keep its personality without my heart trying to teach it a better one. 0156. A decision, small, unfair, proof-coloured. On the stair between 4 and 3, in the stair nose where we'd lifted the fibre last week, sat a nitrile glove fingertip, black, inside out, torn at the pad. Not a whole glove, a finger dropped by someone who practices. I bagged it with hotel tape on an index card. I wrote the minute. I put the card in a blank envelope and signed the flap to myself because I'm old-fashioned about tiny truths. 158. The front glass downstairs breathed a polite inch and kissed shut for no one. The lobby camera saw air. The door controller swore the world stayed seated. We both know which one I believe. I updated dispatch. Front door, polite open, close, no contact. Recovered glove fingertip stair 4/3, service trace continues, no breach of seals. Copy, she said, less bored than last week. Hold, unit 54 out. I took one last lap of 4 before surrendering the moment to clocks. 417's reader blinked green once, brief as a thought. My app didn't bark tamper. The receipt flag held its most recent compromise. The pencil dot sat, blurry and stubborn. The supplies seal number matched itself with the smugness seals have when they think they win arguments. I let the hallway hear me exhale. You can have the room, I said, not loud, not to be brave. You can't have the paper. And when Backup's boots finally came honest up the tile, the building remembered how to be a picture again. Section 8 is what we wrote down after that, and the smaller part I kept, that paper doesn't know how to carry. Morning stapled the night into something polite. The supervisor bagged my nitrile fingertip and wrote the kind of chain of custody that makes pens feel heavy. Engineering photographed the drag lines in the runner, the hip height gouge in paint, the pencil tick under the sweep, the receipt flag by 417. The manager reread the door log twice, like the second pass might invent valid access, where the board still swore it hadn't written one. Controller count plus 3 remained a number that didn't want friends. The lock vendor came back with stronger opinions and softer words. Firmware held, contacts clean, battery high, tamper bit still a gentleman. No complaint when 419 blinked green for me at 0112. If it's the lock, he said, tapping the frame, it's not the lock. He replaced the reader head anyway so he could leave with nouns. Elevator tech printed traces like EKGs, level FAB 4 at the times I'd called out. Doors, 0 edge sensor new, nudge, logic, normal, no service mode, no inspection. Doors parting a coin's width with no command. Stayed a sentence we both disliked. He tightened a hinge out of principle and put a sticker on his work like a band-aid on a rumour. Engineering popped the supplies seal with the manager present. The witness tape tooth hadn't shaved. The push-button cap sat level, the latch cool. Inside, gloves, sample boxes, a rack that had learned dust in a grid. The riser panel behind the lower shelf wore a screw with honest paint and a hairline rub at the lip where a tool could have kissed it once and then pretended it hadn't. "We don't open it without cause," the manager said, which is hotel for we're not ready to know. Housekeeping counted carts like they loved them, 4 in the closet, rings on, brackets straight. They didn't like my wall gouge finding or the runner rails that began nowhere and ended at a stair. "Ours don't do that," the lead said, offended on behalf of carts everywhere. I believed her and the gouge at the same time. Security sent the fingertip downtown. It came back unusable. Too little ridge, too much tear, the kind of nothing that's still a shape in your head. We wrote, submitted, negative, and pretended the envelope didn't weigh more than the card inside it. We widened the ritual because ritual is what hotels sell when they can't sell answers. 2-man checks on the service corridor and stare at Deut 10s. Seals and paint eyes on anything a screwdriver could flirt with. Raw camera profile on the 4-angle with a big, ugly label. No smoothing. Service car trace exporting nightly to a folder named with a date and a hope. Key audits at shift, start and end with signatures that make wrists hurt. PBX swap done, desk phone sullen but honest. For a week I worked days like a person who wants to see sunlight prove it still exists. 4 at noon is a bulletin board. 4:17 at noon is a door that keeps its promises. The service only lamp naps with dignity. The receipt flag went to the shredder. The pencil tick under the sweep stayed until housekeeping mopped it into confession. Then I covered one more overnight because the roster needed me and pride wanted to know if the song would play without me. The building was the same throat it had been, disinfectant and printer dust, elevators that hum, air that remembers how to travel. Asia 119 came and went with nothing. Asia 127 gave the service car a polite level on 4 and no doors, traced and saved like a postcard. Asia 131 blinked green on 417 once, short as a breath. My programmer app still wouldn't call tamper. The corridor HVAC sighed. A ghost of cardboard lemon rode my sleeves. The supplies seal looked bored. No one opened the front glass for no one that night. The line-in-use lamp behaved. The camera showed its honest ugliness throughout. I finished the audit while the printer behaved like a model citizen. At dawn, the manager read my report and underlined repeats without escalation, the way you underline someone you're going to have to live with. We didn't get a face. We didn't get a key number. We didn't get the tidy story of a cart found where a cart shouldn't be. We got a hallway that learned my timing and then enjoyed proving it knew it. We got steel that leveled when it wasn't asked, a reader that gave welcome without a hand, a door that practiced no after saying yes, air that chose the stair, and a glove that left only one finger behind like a calling card you can't frame. I transferred to days a month later and told the next night person everything a hallway can teach without pixelating the soul. I still cover a graveyard here and there when someone's kid is sick. When I do, I walk 4 like it deserves me. I press my nail to 417's deadlatch and wait for that honest resistance. I stand where the peephole only gets a shoulder. I watch the service-only lamp with the patience of a person who has learned not to clap for magic tricks. I listen to the service corridor, breathe at ankle height. I look down the runner for drag lines that begin at nothing and end at a stair. If you want the last picture, it's small. Empty hotel hall, motion strips waking one panel ahead like a courtesy. The service car sitting level on 4 with doors closed, trace printing its little level Albert of 4, doors 0, truth somewhere downstairs. 417's reader winking green like a habit it can't break. A frame screw wearing a dot of paint that hasn't cracked yet. And me, 2 fingers resting on metal I won't push, counting the seconds between a building's inhale and the moment it decides who it belongs to. I took the highway property to help a friend cover a weekend. 2 stories, exterior corridors, L-shape, that wraps a pool we keep closed more than open. Rooms face the parking lot. The breezeway runs like a balcony past every door. If you stand at one end, you can see the soda machine glow at the other, and between them is the kind of night that pretends to be empty. Night audit here is a one-person religion. Reconcile cards, count the drawer, file the folio stack so morning can act like the day started on purpose. Cameras? 6 total. 1 on the office, 2 on the lot, 1 pointed down each breezeway, and a low-angle lens over the ice room that mostly records tourists stiff-arming a bag into shape. No elevators to lie to us, just 2 stair towers that meet the breezeway like punctuation marks. Key system is the cheap breed. Reader wakes when you offer plastic, blinks red for no, green for yes, and keeps no memory a lawyer would enjoy. By Euro 20, the highway's white noise had flattened to a ribbon. The office smelled like coffee that chose stubbornness over flavor. A bug flipped itself on the desk lamp and reconsidered living. The vending machine in the breezeway, 3rd column broken, C2 forever jammed, made that soft motor prayer machines make when they want grace. A truck idled in the far lot, pointing its hood at the county road like it meant to keep being a truck at dawn. I walked my first lap with the light down because exterior corridors borrow enough from the moon. The breezeway concrete had the cold your teeth feel. Doors carried the little scuff lines where luggage wheels confess habits. Room numbers sat proud above tattered peephole shades. At 214 the threshold always holds damp. The slab there learned to keep water as an idea, even when the weather forgot to help. Security here is more geometry than software. You learn sight lines, which angle leaves you visible to every peephole at once, which corner hides you from 206 while you listen to 210 breathe. You learn the difference between gravel and grit. Gravel reports to your ears, grit reports to your shoes. If a door wakes to a key, the reader LED will bloom before it decides no, and that half second is where a lot of people live. Carts? We keep 2 for housekeeping and 1 small hand truck for late luggage. They live under the stair by the laundry, chained. On paper, after 20, there's no cart rides the breezeway. On nights with a breeze, the chain knocks truth out of the hand truck once or twice, and then remembers manners. War 037, a guest called to ask if the pool was secretly open because they could still see water. I gave the no we use when we'd like to keep being liked. At E049, 122 needed more pillows. I left them at the door and heard the murmur of a TV a state away. At D056, the ice machine chewed itself into a calm hum that carried all the way up the stair tower like a mechanical lullaby. I like to read breezeways with my shoulders. The right amount of cool across jacket cloth means nothing is standing where air should go. Half an hour in, the second floor run gave me an extra ounce of quiet. Too considered, the way a room sounds when somebody is practicing being a shadow. I held at the stair, let the highway wash the minute, and then took 5 slow steps to where 214's door throws its shadow under the pole light. The reader windows along that stretch had their winter film of smudges. At 216, the paint near the handle wears a crescent from 100 left-hand guests. At 212, the kickplate screws are too proud, as if the last maintenance man was in a hurry to be done being useful. No on-camera movement. The breezeway lens can't see the last 10 feet by 214 because of the corner return. That blind is nothing during the day and everything at midnight. I checked the little things I always check, because little things have told me more than alarms ever did. The motel's plastic. No smoking placard at 214 hangs always a little crooked. Tonight it hung straight, like a hand with time had practiced straightening it. The welcome mat someone bought 5 managers ago was off by 2 inches and canted toward the jamb. The gap at the bottom of 214's door, the one I've hated since June, looked wider by the thick of a dime. I put 2 fingers to the metal frame near the latch and learned a temperature I trust. Cold, like night, not warmed where a wrist would have leaned. The knob slack, then honest. Door sweep stiff like always. I listened to the crack below the threshold and got concrete, not carpet. No TV, no human sleep. The kind of nothing motels sell in bulk. Back by the office, the radio chattered about a smash-up 3 exits south and a deputy looking for a stray witness. The motel knows those voices. They come with holidays and rain. I muted the volume a notch and let the lot camera show me a cat learning how motion detectors assign blame. The printer coughed on an authorization slip and figured out its life without me. 0110. I did the same lap backward because changing the song is how you keep people from learning it. At the bottom of the west stair, I found a little constellation of gravel bites kicked out from under a step. Fresh, bolder than grit. Might have ridden down in someone's shoe, might have leapt when a wheel hit wrong. I crouched and let my hand read the drag line along the edge where concrete meets metal. Faint, parallel, too wide for a suitcase handle, just right for a cart that wants to be a ghost. The chain under the laundry stair still lay like a snake that had gone to church. The cart wheels were true and bored. I tugged the chain once, the way you pat pockets you know are full. It answered with the exact clink I expected. Good, honest, not useful. By 0118, the air went glassy again on the second floor run. A door on the far leg breathed, not opened, not closed, just learned how to decide. I stood at the rail and watched headlights smear the far lane, then listened past my own blood for the sound I was hoping not to hear. The flat knock a cartwheel makes when it passes a stair edge. Nothing. Just ice chewing, highway shaping, a flag at the office sign trying to find a wind worth having. I set my tell in case the night wanted to be chatty later. A folded receipt slid an inch under 214's welcome mat, edge kissing carpet, light enough for draft to move, heavy enough not to blow. Not a trap. A witness. Back inside, the audit ran like a washing machine that's learned not to walk. Drawer balanced, authorizations closed. Camera grid settled into its ritual. Office, lot, east run, west run, ice room but I let my personal monitor keep the west breezeway big, because the blind by 214 belongs to anyone who respects quiet and tires. If you were listening with me, you'd have heard it then. The ice machines hum, notch up, half a key, the way motors do when a door opens or a body absorbs air. That's not proof, that's weather. I took my flashlight out of courtesy to my eyes and left it off out of courtesy to theirs. I wrote 0127 West Breezeway feels heavier, 210 2 and 16, paper doesn't like that sentence. Nights do. When I stepped out, the highway had folded itself another mile farther away. The soda machine blinked its lie about C2 being ready for service. The second-floor rail wore a silver smear where someone had leaned their weight 2 weeks ago. I saw my own hand in it and felt the stupid comfort that comes from art recognizing its thief. I gave the night my best offer, a slow walk past 206, 208, 210, 212, 214, no pause by peepholes, no theatre by locks, just a person with a clipboard pretending to be invisible. Doors showed me nothing. The reader windows slept red. The mat at 214 stayed polite over my folded witness. The little space under the door kept being slightly wider than the building deserves. I told myself the story this property uses to survive. Exterior corridors make noise lie, wind makes draft, ice machines sing whatever key they want at 0130, and went back to the desk to let the printer decide who I was. At 0141 the phone rang, and a tired voice from 220 said, "Hey, not to bug you, someone just pushed a cart past my door and it rattled like it was missing a wheel." And that's where the oddity begins. 1:41 a.m. The call from room 220 sounded embarrassed to exist. "Not to bug you, someone just pushed a cart past my door. It rattled like it's missing a wheel." After 8 p.m, staff carts are chained under the laundry stair. I kept my voice even. "Please stay inside, I'll take a look." I left the office lights low so the glass wouldn't turn me into a billboard and stepped into air that had practiced being colder. Second floor, West Run. The ice machine at mid-span had tuned itself a half key higher. The note compressors sing when a door trades air. At room 218, a TV murmured through drywall like a creak. At room 216, the peephole shade hung crooked, as always. At room 214, the welcome mat still covered the folded receipt I'd slid under it earlier, edge-kissing carpet, witness waiting. No cart in sight, just proof a cart had wanted to be here, a slim scuff arc on stucco at hip height, chalky and fresh, 2 faint, parallel drag lines along the concrete, the width of our housekeeping wheels, starting nowhere useful and ending shy of the stair's blind corner. I crouched and felt with my palm, dust pushed into soft ridges on either side of the tracks, the way a path forms when something rides light and straight. Down in the lot, a truck idled like it planned to be permanent. Across the balcony at room 220, a curtain held a pencil-thin gap. Inside that gap, not a face, knees, maybe shorts, maybe skin, the colour red like quiet. When the breeze touched the opening, the hem moved as if someone leaned forward to listen. I took the stair corner and held before showing whoever owned that sound what I looked like. The steps posted their honesty, fresh gravel bites tucked against a riser, 2 pebbles that hadn't learned dust yet, a mark where rubber had kissed concrete flat and high. Under the laundry stair, the chain lay like a decision, loops honest, carts where they should be. Back at room 214, the reader window woke when I got within a handspan. Its red deepened the way cheap sets do when a body is near. I didn't present a key. It blinked green so briefly you could call it wishful, then back to red. The knob gave slack, then a firm no. I listened to the gap under the sweep and got concrete, not carpet. No TV, no fan, the kind of nothing motels sell in bulk. At the ice machine, the little mechanical nook door sat an inch proud of its frame. That door never seals right, but tonight the strike wore a new half-moon rubbed the size of a coin. Metal, asking metal for forgiveness, and getting it. I pressed it shut with 2 fingers. It didn't latch like a person who'd decided against commitment. The machine thunked once, coughed, then found its hum again. In the stair shadow, I checked the feeds on my phone. The West Breezeway camera covered rooms 206 through 212 perfectly, and then surrendered to the corner, leaving 214 and 216 in a blind comma. The ice room camera stuttered once. The time code jumped 13 seconds. Not a gap, exactly, just a skip, like the night had edited itself for pace. On my way back, I lifted the mat at room 214 a hair. The folded receipt had crept a quarter-inch toward the jamb. Not wind. A draft can do that when someone treats the slab like a breathing thing. I centered it and let the mat lay. "Front to room 220, I said at the door, loud enough for the knees to hear too. "No card on the run. I'll keep a patrol." The lock clicked politely, the sound of someone choosing not to open. The curtain gap stayed a pencil. I walked without theatre. Doors stayed doors. Lights did what lights do when they haven't been asked into a story. The only proof was 2 lines on concrete and a curtain that knew knees. 1:58 a.m. the soda machine, at the far end, whirred for C2 like it meant to work, then smothered the spiral a half-turn short. The rattle it made rode the corridor like a wheel, with a flat spot. 2:03 a.m. I took the stairs from the lot slow, aiming to meet a rhythm instead of make one. The breezeway's cold felt like it had been held in a hand and set down carefully. I stopped where room 212 would keep me out of peepholes and listened to the run between room 214 and room 218. The ice machine hummed like a thought someone else was thinking. There, it came like a memory wearing shoes, rattle, pause, rattle. The cadence of a cart with one stubborn wheel. Not a push down the whole run, the sound appeared, travelled 2 doors worth, and extinguished itself as if someone had remembered to be clever. The rail carried the tremor. My palm learned the cart had passed behind me, not toward me. I didn't chase. I let the corner be the theatre. At the blind by room 214, the drag lines looked newer than 10 minutes ago, now with a second set offset an inch, like someone had corrected their aim. The wall at hip height wore a lower, fresh chalk kiss. If you've watched a cart wear its bumper ring wrong, you know that mark. Room 214's reader woke again when I got close. A shy bloom like a cheap key winked at it from another pocket of reality. It denied me politely. Read. I kept 2 fingers on the knob. Slack, then a firm no. The sweep's shadow shifted a hair as the draft leaned under. The folded receipt turned itself a degree, keeping me company. I took 3 steps toward the ice nook. The door that never seals right had more not right tonight. Its strike rub looked newer under the beam, chalk not yet smudged by fingers. Inside, the bay smelled like chlorine tabs and cardboard. The outlet for the camera's transformer sat just proud in the socket, like someone had half decided to unplug it. I pressed it in till it seated. The feed hiccuped, then steadied. In the rail's reflection, motion that wasn't mine, not a person, knee-height shadow crossing the bright rectangle under room 218, vanishing into room 216. The sound paired to it a second later, a single roll, then the flat clack of a wheel, taking a stair nose gently, like a hand guiding it down. I reached the stair and looked over without showing a head. First landing, fresh gravel bites where a weight had leaned. Second landing, a print in dust that wasn't a shoe, wasn't a paw, just a rounder, oily oval, the size of a palm or a wheel hub. I photographed the nothing and wrote, landing smudge, because reports pretend to hate metaphors. A door behind me learned how to be almost closed, not the ice room. Room 212. The latch tongue sat shy of home by the thickness of a business card. Air sneaked from the crack and made the hairs at my wrist practice obedience. "Front desk," I said, soft, neighborly. The tongue gave up the distance and clicked like a person deciding not to talk. 2:11 a.m. the office phone rang. Room 214 this time. Woman awake enough to be angry at the idea of being afraid. Something's outside, like a cart. It hit my door. I looked at the kick plate. A new, bright nick, exactly where a wheel bracket would kiss if someone practiced passing too close. "Stay inside," I said. "I'm here now." The reader at room 214 woke a third time with my body near it. Longer bloom, then red. I stood, so the peephole got a shoulder and a lanyard, not eyes. People tolerate a shoulder. Eye contact through glass is a contract. I checked the chain under the laundry stair again, if only to give my hands somewhere to put their anger. Chain? Good. Both house carts wore their rubber rings like wedding bands. The hand truck's handle carried old day shift smudges, nothing fresh. The padlock showed the honest bite marks of a key that fits on the first try. Back up top, the west camera remained loyal to its old blind. The ice room camera now held steady, time code faithful, resolving only the moths. The breezeway mic rode the rattle pause rattle one more time from the far turn, then lost it when the compressor kicked. 2:18 a.m. I positioned at room 216's jam, not in the window, just near it, so anyone who shadows corners would have to choose me or air. The rattle didn't come. Instead, a slow drag, corrected by a hand that respects quiet. A shadow slid across the far stucco like a coat's hem, then learned to be the color of wall. I stepped back so my shoes wouldn't broadcast the wrong message and let the night have the next move. Room 214's mat trembled. The folded receipt eased toward the jam another quarter inch, as if the door had practiced breathing again. I centered the slip and pressed the corners so it would remember where good is. The soda machine coughed a rerun of C2 failure. The ice machine dropped a load like applause. Someone laughed too loud down by room 202 and turned it into a cough to keep their dignity. None of it mattered to the run between room 214 and room 218. I swept my light across the rail once, low and quick. The silver smear where someone leaned 2 weeks ago had a new sibling, a thinner, sharper stripe an inch below, as if a different height of hand had tested listening. I put my palm on the colder stripe and let the metal tell me where the rattle had last lived. It buzzed once, the ghost of a wheel memory, and forgot me. I called dispatch with the smallest words that still mean something. Highway property, probable unauthorized cart movement on second floor west run. Reader wakes at room 214. Kick plate nick fresh. Drag lines present. Camera blind at corner. No subject seen. They gave me the bedtime tone that means they're listening but don't own my concrete. I stopped moving for a full minute. Somewhere in the blind, one wheel rolled a half turn, then didn't. It's the sound people make when they measure you. When I finally shifted my weight, the cart measured me back with a single flat clack on a stair nose and a silence that tasted like a smile. I changed the song. Keys out once, loud enough to be a rookie, then quiet enough to be a rumor. I went past room 206 fast, drifted at room 208, stalled at room 210. People who practice learn your tempo and spend it against you. The rattle pause rattle answered from the blind near room 214. Not a straight roll, 2 doors worth, then patience, like someone counting doors instead of feet. I hugged the rail so the peepholes got shoulder and badge lanyard, not eyes. The ice machine chose that moment to cough a bag through the chute, and under the noise the cart spent one clean push. Timing is a kind of ownership. At room 214, the rectangle of light under the door did a trick. A moving shadow crossed from jam to hinge, low, exactly wheel height, then left the gap empty again. Inside was dark. The shadow belonged to the breezeway spill. The welcome mat fluttered once. The folded receipt under it crept another quarter inch. Gravel likes damp. 2 pebbles had stuck to the threshold where this slab always holds a little water. I took the corner past the blind instead of into it, debt collector pace, not drama, and let my light ride the concrete at ankle height. 2 drag lines were freshened, the chalk of stucco brushed at hip height a second time, lower, like a shorter hand had tested the wall. The stair gave me a single flat clack on a nose, then silence. He was one landing ahead again, or behind, depending on who you asked. I didn't chase into stair echo. I went down the far stair, cut under the L, and came up the other tower to meet the cadence somewhere it didn't expect me. Mid-landing, the air did the small in-out that says a door near the ice machine learned to be almost closed again. When the compressor kicked, the cart took its cover, a half roll under the noise. Practice, not magic. I gave myself one small legal tell. I set a coin on edge against the breezeway baseboard by room 216, where the wall kicks a millimeter proud. If anything brushed too close, the coin would nap and tell on the brush. Petty? Yes, useful. More than cameras in motels. At room 220, the curtain gap returned to a pencil. Knees gone. The hem breathed like someone had stepped backward with respect. "You're fine," I said quietly to their door. No theatre, just sentences a person can believe in the dark. The number light above room 214 hummed like a mosquito. 2:26 a.m. From the office speaker, the breezeway mic leaked the rattle as a metallic whisper. On the concrete, it read, as weight corrected, then weight paused. At room 212, the peephole shade was half down, the little plastic tab most guests never touch. When I brushed the shade with my knuckle, it settled and stayed. If you've worked these halls, you know that's a listening position. I stood 3 doors back from the blind and did nothing for a full minute. Somewhere just out of the corner, a wheel rolled one careful arc, then didn't. The ice machine swallowed air like a swimmer. The soda machine at the far end offered me a pity whir and died on C2, a sound good enough to hide a single push if you'd rehearsed it. I took 2 silent steps into the blind, low light on concrete. The drag lines traced to the stair and faded as if a hand had learned to lift the cart just enough to break witness. Hip-high wall chalk gave me a fresh kiss I could smear with a finger if I were sloppy. I wasn't. In the stair, a single oily oval on the landing looked newer, centered where a person hides weight when they stop a cart mid-air to train it better. I cut right again, down 1 flight, and under the L, to own the base of the stair he was aiming for. On the ground level, the chain beneath the laundry sat good. Both house carts wore their rubber rings like they were proud. The padlock had nothing new to show me. I bent to the hand truck for comfort and found only the old, greasy handprints day shift leaves on anything with handles. Back up at room 214, the receipt had turned itself another neat angle, polite as a compass. The mat felt warm at the edges the way rubber does when it's been used as a hinge. That tiny kick-plate nick I'd clocked earlier showed brighter under my beam, a pea-sized clean bite a bracket would make if it enjoyed being a problem. I gave the hallway a sentence the way you give a dog a palm to smell. "If you belong here," I said to air, "I can help you. If you don't, call it a night." The rail buzzed a memory. Rattle, pause, rattle, 2 doors down, inside the blind. I didn't go to it. I let it measure my not going. 2:33 a.m. I heard the kind of contact you learn by cleaning up after it. A soft bump against a door that wasn't trying to be brave. Which door? The blind kept the answer. In the office, the phone stayed honest. The breezeway mic laid down a line of static, then returned with the ice machine's civil hum, as if the corridor had swallowed its own sentence. I repositioned to where my coin lived by room 216. It was sleeping face down, exactly the way I wanted it to if a cart had brushed the wall. I lifted it, marked a tiny pencil dot where its edge had printed on the baseboard, and stood it on edge again. You don't get to have forensics here. You get to have polite tattletales and a notebook. The last pass of the hour gave me a 3-beat of signs. First, The drag lines on concrete lengthened another foot toward the stair. Second, the hip chalk laid a third, lower kiss. Third, the reader at room 214 did its bloom, then read without me presenting anything at all. The peephole's plastic shade had slid half down on its own, which is not a thing shades do when they're alone. I didn't knock, I didn't crouch. I let the run have its dignity. When I finally took the corner, quick and quiet, the rattle gave me one parting flat clack on the lower stair nose and handed the breezeway back to the ice machine like a magician returning your watch. Paper here is poor, that's part of the job. I still fed it. Guest reports, 1:41 a.m. from room 220, cart rattled past. 2:11 a.m. from room 214, something hit my door. Fresh nick on room 214's kick plate lined with the report. The curtain at room 220 showed knees once. Later, a pencil gap, respectful. Carts, the housekeeping sheet showed both carts chained by 8 p.m., the hand truck logged under laundry. Visual check, present, rings on, chain correct, lock honest. Contradiction, drag lines the exact width of our wheels, and hip-height chalk kisses we don't make when our rubber rings are on. Either a fifth cart existed for an hour, or someone de-ringed ours, toured, then put the ring back before I counted. Chain said no, concrete said nice try. Readers, our motel system is blunt. It wakes when you're near, blinks green on a yes, red on a no, and keeps no audit beyond counting batteries and believing in itself. At room 214, the reader bloomed 3 times with no card presented. Paper can't hold that. I wrote reader wakes without presentation and hated the sentence for being a feeling pretending to be a fact. Cameras, the West Breezeway lens holds the run from rooms 206 through 212 and then loses room 214 in the corner's blind comma. The ice room camera stuttered a 13-second skip once. Later, I found the transformer not fully seated in the outlet. After I pressed it in, the time code behaved. What lives in the skip? Paper says nothing. My ears say timing. The cart took its role when the picture forgot. Mic. The corridor mic is tinny, lazy, and still told me a truth. Rattle, pause, rattle, synced to the ice and soda percussion. The cart used those noises like cover. Paper gets ambient noise, I get cadence. Mechanicals. The ice nook door wore a fresh half-moon rub at the strike. The door never loved its latch before. Tonight it looked like decided. The soda machine tried C2 twice and failed twice. Machines play their own songs. People who practice learn to choreograph to them. Surfaces, breezeway concrete carried 2 sets of parallel lines, mostly straight, offset an inch on the second pass, as if a hand had adjusted trajectory. The wall at hip height wore 3 chalk kisses, descending like someone shorter had tried their hand. The landing smudge, an oily oval, read like a wheel hub or a palm. Gravel bites at stair corners were fresh, stuck to room 214's damp threshold like crumbs that don't apologize. My coin at room 216 fell, as designed, then tattled with a graphite edge mark. You only notice if you hate baseboards, phones and desk. No false line in use on this property. Just honest ringing when guests needed to be believed. That's almost worse. Nothing to argue with on paper. What paper won't carry the shadow under room 214's door moving like a wheel's thought? The peephole shade half lowered like a person was listening properly. The way the ice machine's breath became a cue. The idea that someone mapped our blind and enjoyed using it with us, not against us, like a duet neither of us chose. I still wrote it clean. 1:41 a.m. and 2:11 a.m. Guest calls about cart noise. Room 214, kick plate nick fresh. Reader at room 214 wakes 3 times without presentation. No audit capability. Drag lines present from rooms 212 to the stair. 3 fresh hip-height wall scuffs, landing smudge observed. Ice room outlet transformer reseated. Earlier 13-second skip seen, restored. Breezeway mic captured intermittent rattle pause rattle. Coin test at room 216. Receipt witness at room 214. Both displaced. Reset each time. House cards visually present and chained. Rings on, hand truck present. Contradiction with marks noted. Recommendations? The owner texted at 3:07 a.m. like a man pricing peace. I gave him the cheap truths. Re-aim the west camera to kill the blind. Add a stanchion by the corner to deny a straight roll. Paint tick marks on our house cart's rubber rings. Hang a dummy chain mid-run to make wheels loud. None of that will stop a practiced person. It teaches their timing to stop being fun. Dispatch asked if I wanted a counter unit. Only if they're bored, I said. No face, no body, just a corridor that thinks it's clever. They weren't bored. A deputy rolled through the lot once to show the uniform to the knight. The cart, if there was a cart, and I believe in nouns, chose not to admire him. Paper closed polite. Concrete kept its smudges. The breeze cooled 2 degrees toward dawn, and the C2 spiral laughed at me one last time by pretending to work. When the sun came up just enough to make the blind less blind, the drag lines read like pencil on the floor. I took a photo that wouldn't help anyone later and promised myself I'd come back with a stupid fix and a better ear. Morning wears different shoes at a highway motel. The owner came in with coffee that tasted like a threat and a notepad already half full. I walked him through the clocks. 1:41 a.m., guest at room 220, 2:11 a.m., guest at room 214, drag lines from room 212 to the stair. 3 hip-height chalk kisses, kick plate nick fresh, ice room outlet half-seated, reader blooms at room 214 with no card. He didn't like any of it, and liked that he didn't like it even less. We started with mechanicals because screws confess faster than people. Maintenance reseated the ice room door strike, tightened hinge screws, and ran a whisper of graphite so we'd stop mistaking stubborn for sinister. He zip-tied the camera's transformer to the outlet so a thoughtful hand couldn't half decide it again. We re-aimed the west breezeway camera to kill the corner's blind comma, sacrificing a room number square to gain the run in front of rooms 214 through 218. Then the cheap fixes, a waist-high stanchion and chain at the corner to deny a straight roll, a bright dummy chain mid-run so any wheel has to announce itself, pencil tick marks on our house cart's rubber rings and wheel brackets. If someone strips and redresses them, we'll read it in the ticks. The owner taped a "Do Not Move" tag inside each ring because paper loves theatre. I walked him to the stair corners and showed him the fresh gravel bites and the landing's oily oval you only see if you've learned to hate dust. He crouched, grunted, and gave the sentence small properties use when they're buying time. We'll put in for better cameras. Then he wrote later in his tiny book, which is motel for not this month. The deputy came back mid-morning to log a drive-through. We pulled the recorder for his dashcam timestamp. Nothing useful except my flashlight being the world's worst actor. He offered to swing by around 2 a.m. on his next graveyard, radio wide open so we could hear him arrive on the office speaker. It isn't procedure, it's mercy with a badge. Housekeeping rolled their eyes through inventory, not at me, but at the idea of fifth carts and missing rings. Both carts present, rings intact, chain honest. I showed them the hip scuffs and the drag lines anyway. "That's not our handwriting," the lead said, and I believed her. We posted a memo in the break room. After 8 p.m., no carts on breezeways. It was already a rule. Rules like company. The owner asked for one more thing. Next storm, you do another overnight and change your song. If it's a person, they'll try to learn you again. He didn't say insider. The word lived under his coffee lid. 2 nights later, at 1:52 a.m., the deputy rolled through with his roof lights quiet. We heard his open mic breathe on our speaker, and under the static, a voice we didn't own slipped across a shared channel. He's moving, thin and tinny, pocket radio tone. The corridor chose to be a picture again. Storm night makes this place think it's a ship. Wind turns the breezeways into throats. I took the shift because the owner asked like a person who hates asking. 12:58 a.m. Rain pushed the lot into a mirror. The pool slept under plastic. The corner chain swayed just enough to be a metronome. Our west camera drew an honest box over the run from room 214 to room 218. I walked loud once. Keys, radio tap, a fast pass past room 206, and then walked like a roomer for the rest of it. 1:09 a.m. The ice machine stepped up a key. Doors nearby trade air when storm pressure leans. The stanchion chain lifted and sat, a tiny clink you feel in teeth. Past room 214, the welcome mat trembled a polite hair. The folded receipt witness stayed square. 1:14 a.m. I ran a decoy lap, down the far stair, cut the L, up the near, then stopped dead at room 212 and let the corridor choose me. The rattle-pause rattle returned, softer, under rain, the cadence of a wheel with a flat spot taught to be a gentleman. Our camera saw it this time, not a body, just a bracket shadow at hip height sliding across room 216 stucco, then dipping out of frame as if a hand had learned the new angle. 1:16 a.m. The dummy chain mid-run kissed metal, tink, once. The rattle answered with a single clean push, timed to the ice drop. I stepped into the bigger picture we'd bought and caught the after image I'd been owed for a week. 2 wet arcs on concrete side by side, then a light lift, weight shifted to palms or bracket, and the lines broken for a yard, then set down again toward the stair. 1:19 a.m. At the corner, on the baseboard just before the stair, a thin brass shim hid in the seam, filed smooth, the kind you slip behind latches when you know how patient metal can be. I slid it into an envelope with hotel tape and wrote 1:19 because clocks help you remember who you were. 1:22 a.m. The deputy keyed up as he turned in. The office speaker flickered, our side first, then someone else's carrier stepped on top. He's moving. It came with the room tone of a handheld in a pocket, not a dash. The deputy parked under the office light, and the breezeway gave us nothing but rain. That's how timing works when someone practices with you as their metronome. 1:27 a.m. The reader at room 214 did a long bloom, then read as if a cheap encoder had whispered a yes from a pocket where it didn't live. Our system can't audit. The light still wrote the sentence on my nerves. The kickplate nick from last week shone brighter. A second, smaller shine had joined it a half-inch above, the height of a different pass or a different hand. The camera grabbed 3 frames of wheel shadow sliding past the number box on room 216. No face, no coat. A hint that had learned to be only a hint. 1:31 a.m. Wind leaned on the building. The stanchion rattled a rhythm. The chain left a chalk kiss on stucco where it had never reached before. I set another coin on edge at room 216. It stood thinking, then napped with a soft tick. I marked the graphite edge and felt dumb and correct at the same time. 1:36 a.m. The stair told the truth it only tells to people who wait. One flat clack as a wheel kissed the lowest nose, then a pause while weight transferred to forearms and pride. The landing held a new, oily oval, a shade offset from last week's, like someone who studies their own footprints. 1:42 a.m. Under the laundry stair, the dumpster lid lifted and settled. Rain does that, so do people. I checked it at 2:05 a.m. when the storm took a breath. Inside, against a nest of pizza boxes, sat a cartwheel, rubber ring wrapped in duct tape, bracket scarred from elbows and once blue paint buried under grime. Not ours. It had learned our height anyway. I bagged the shim and photographed the wheel where it slept like a bad word. The owner had told me to call if I found nouns. I called. He said, "Don't touch the wheel till morning. Let the rain write us an alibi." And I hated how good that sounded. 2:18 a.m. The corridor gave me one more practiced kindness. The rattle-pause rattle moved to the other leg of the L, then stopped when it learned I'd learned. The reader at room 214 stayed shy for the rest of the night. The camera did its job. The blind we'd killed stayed dead. When dawn made the concrete honest, the drag lines read like underlines toward the stair, and the stanchion chain wore 2 bright points where a bracket had taught it to sing. The county took the wheel from the dumpster like it was a relative they didn't want to see again. "No cereal," the deputy said, "because sometimes you say things just to fill the air." They dusted it out of respect for the effort. Rain laughed at the idea of prints. Our shim went into a little envelope with a number that made it a guest at evidence for a while. If it was custom filed, it was filed by a patient hand. Housekeeping swore their carts hadn't left the chain. Our tick marks on the rubber rings stayed where pencils leave them. Maintenance checked every ring and bracket for fresh wrench scars. Nothing fresh, nothing honest. The owner hung a stiffer chain at the corner, and a no equipment beyond this point sign that will help good people be better and won't teach practiced ones anything at all. The camera gave us what cameras can: 3 frames of shadow at hip height, 2 passes of wet arcs on concrete, 1 coin asleep beside a graphite edge. The corridor mic gave us the rattle-pause rattle like a heartbeat someone can control. The reader at room 214 kept doing its bloom then red about once a week at inconvenient minutes, which is how cheap electronics apologize. Guests moved on. Room 214 checked out with a shrug. Room 220 left a handwritten thank you for walking by more often than usual. The soda machine kept lying about C2. The ice machine learned a nicer hum after maintenance, seated its latch like it meant it. I can't sell you a face. I can sell you a route, the west run, the corner chain, rooms 214 through 218 as the practice lane, the stair as stage door, the dumpster as a place to shed weight when weight makes noise. I can sell you tools, a shim thin enough to request a latch's patience, a wheel with a taped ring to cheat a baseboard, timing that uses our own mechanicals as cover. I can sell you verbs, measured, corrected, listened. I worked 2 more nights there because pride wanted a rematch. The corridor behaved like furniture for both. That's how practice punishes you. It stops performing the minute you're ready to applaud. If you want the last picture, it fits in a pocket. Rain-dark breezeway, chain at the corner whispering against itself, coin on edge remembering gravity, wet arcs that start at nothing and end at the stair. A reader bloom that means no one you can name. And me, hand on cold rail, listening for the flat clack a wheel makes when it thinks no one learned the song. First night on mobile felt like being the spare key in someone else's pocket. The route was 3 properties and a coffee that tasted like burned leaves, but the stop everybody warned me about was the medical building with the pharmacy on the ground and the clinic on floor 4. On a map, it looks like a clean rectangle with a small parking throat. In person, it feels like a throat that learned how to whisper. We rolled up a little after 1:15 a.m. Wind pushed trash along the curb in slow circles, the kind of circles you get when a storm is somewhere else and planning to visit. The garage gate sat open like a mouth that forgot its manners. The front glass at the main entry had a spidered corner where a lock has been nagged too many times by keys that don't quite love it. If someone broke in, my trainer said, the alarm would be screaming. The lobby monitors answered with a sleepy blue that means no one told me to care. Halloween week makes empty buildings louder. Decorations from day shift, paper pumpkins taped to the volunteer desk, curled at the corners and clicked when the air handler coughed. The directory board kept its light on like a polite lie. Family practice, pediatrics, imaging, pharmacy. Elevator indicators slept at ground. The stairwell behind the lobby traded air the way a house does when a window upstairs is cracked, just enough to flirt. My trainer gave me the route like a song I was supposed to hum. Garage sweep first, then lobby, then elevator to 4, then down by stairs, then exterior walk. Dispatch wanted a perimeter picture every 30 minutes, and a voice, not a text, if anything felt like it was trying to be smart. The garage was a dim aquarium, low sodium lamps, concrete pillars in ribs, a drip that had picked a drain to believe in. Spots painted for doctors sat empty with their names silvered on placards, anonymity that pretends to be special. A service door that should have been latched wore a tired gap you could argue with a shoulder. I put 2 fingers on the metal near the strike and learned the temperature I trust. Corridor cool, not hand warm. No scuff fresh enough to claim pride. A candy wrapper stuck to the grit by one wheel stop, black and orange, cheap sugar scent hanging on it like an afterthought. Holiday evidence without a person attached. Back upstairs you could hear the pharmacy's refrigerator through the glass like a conscience, a tiny compressor that means insulin is sleeping, and regulation would like a word. The front door of the pharmacy was shuttered and locked. The side pass-through where day shift hands out prescriptions had a felt bumper that carried the ghost of a palm. Nothing wrong, nothing right, just a building rehearsing. We hit the elevator because policy likes you to prove you were where trouble would take the easy route. Buttons felt new. The panel smell had that plastic solder note you get when a modernization is only a few months old. As we approached, the car woke itself and began to count floors. It hadn't been asked to count. Ground, 1, 2, 3, then 4. Phantom calls, my trainer said, casual like a person who has decided superstition is cheaper than parts. The doors slid open on 4 with no one telling them to, and motion sensors brought up lights in sections like a fuse being polite. Floor 4 looks different at night. Pediatric giraffes printed on a wall mural become long-necked witnesses. Exam room windows show you your own shadow when your flashlight is off, and someone else's when your flashlight is on. The nurse's station, a horseshoe of clean surfaces, held a bowl that used to have candy in it. A note taped to it said, 1 each, in a hand that believed smiley faces can teach restraint. The bowl was empty except for a single wrapper folded into a neat square. My trainer tested doors with the back of his knuckles the way you do when you want to learn temperature without leaving oils. Everything said closed, everything said routine. Down the hall, a crash cart shadow looked like a person waiting to decide if they were a person. In the far stairwell somewhere below us, a step made the soft complaint of rubber that's thinking about remembering. The air moved from the stair toward us, ankle low, like breath that didn't want to be seen. "Hold on 4, dispatch said when we checked in. "Senior is 10 out." My trainer turned his radio down a notch and whispered what passes for comfort in this work. "Buildings have habits. People copy them." He meant, "Don't write ghosts into your report." I meant to believe him. Halloween sits in hallways even when no one hangs skeletons. It sits in the way a hand sanitizer dispenser coughs once with no hand near it, then decides it was a dream. It sits in the way a waiting room chair at the end of the row is pulled half an inch off the line, and you can't tell if a janitor did it or a person who didn't want their back to a door. It sits in the way the elevator we didn't touch picked 4 again and held there, doors closed, like it was waiting for someone who already knew their route. We started the sweep because that's what you do when a building tries to have a personality. Exam rooms, dark, clean, sharps box, mouths closed, vaccine fridge, locked, humming, supply closet, sealed with a numbered sticker that read correctly from the hinge side, which means no one bragged about opening it from the wrong end. The stair door at the far end wore a new rub at latch height, a tiny crescent in the paint. Fresh? Maybe. Paint lies politely. On the way back to the nurse's station, the printer on the counter decided to spit one sheet of white like it had remembered a thought, and then forgotten it. My trainer raised one eyebrow. I picked up the paper, blank, warm. The screensaver on the workstation rolled from pumpkin screens to a locked initials prompt. The clock in the corner added a minute while we watched. We were almost to the elevator again when the front glass downstairs hissed in my ear over radio. Open, then close, like a breath you only take to prove to yourself you can. The lobby camera said no, the entry log said no. The door still decided it had a sentence. "We'll hold," my trainer told dispatch, and he set his palm on the stainless rail that rims the nurse's station, the way you pet a dog you're not sure trusts you. The building made us this promise: everything normal, everything boring, everything fine. It kept the promise the way October keeps daylight in its pocket and spends it mean. 1:21 a.m. The elevator that had carried us to 4 decided it missed us. We were halfway down the main corridor when its indicator chimed a polite note, counted itself down to ground, then back up through 1, 2, 3, and settled on 4 again without opening. The panel light held like a blink someone forgot to finish. My trainer listened with his head tilted, the way mechanics do when a sound offers a riddle. "Phantom call," he said, but he said it like someone repeating a phrase he doesn't believe. At the nurse's station, the workstation screensaver showed a rolling pumpkin, then a lock screen with initials that belonged to nobody working nights. The clock ticked itself 1 minute older, and the printer exhaled a single blank sheet. Warm. No job queued on the display. I slid the paper under the keyboard like a witness with stage fright. Down the south hall, a stair door sat flush and proper, until I touched the steel near the latch and learned a degree of hand warmth that didn't belong to HVAC. A fresh paint crescent kissed the strike, thin as a coin edge. When we eased it open, air brushed ankle level toward us, the way it moves when someone recently made space for it and then decided against sharing. The pharmacy on ground spoke its tiny refrigerator hymn through the glass. We could hear that from 4 because the front entry liked to help. Once each minute, a thin seal hiss as if the door tested its own weather strip. The access log downstairs would later swear nobody touched it. Paper tells you the building is an idea. Air tells you it's a body. We checked the ped's wing, murals of long-necked animals, a row of chairs that day. Shift keeps too perfect. Chair at the end was pulled half an inch proud of the line, maybe a janitor with a tired hip, maybe a person who wanted both walls in sight. The hand sanitizer station sneezed once with no hand near it, then learned manners. My trainer gave me the look that says do not write ghosts, and I return the look that says I won't, unless the ghost fills out a form. 1:28 a.m. The elevator doors slid open by themselves and offered us nothing inside. On the floor of the cab, a wet shoe scalloped the size of a child's heel, and then nothing, as if the step learned how to end itself halfway. "Condensation," my trainer said, and wiped it with his boot. He wanted the mystery to be a spill. I wanted it to be anything that obeyed nouns. Back at the nurse's station, the phone on the wall flashed a missed call icon with no call, then thought better of it and went still. The overhead speaker woke to mumble a half-syllable of music from nobody's radio, and then coughed itself quiet. Somewhere below, a garage gate chain clinked against itself like a metronome losing time. The building had a pulse it didn't wish to explain. We paused at the supply closet with the numbered seal. The digits read properly from the hinge side, no tampering you could put on paper. But the adhesive edge wore a thumbshine at the corner, the kind you get when someone rehearses the peel and stops in the rehearsal. I pressed my ear to the metal and heard the hush of boxes that have learned to be respectful. Dispatch came on, breathing calm. Status? My trainer gave them the safe version. Garage gate open on arrival, front entry quiet, elevator odd cycling, floor 4 clear, holding for senior. Copy, hold. The word has weight, makes time your job. 1:33 a.m. The directory board in the lobby, family practice, pediatrics, imaging, pharmacy, flickered a quarter second, then remembered to be steady. We watched it on the camera, and in the on-screen reflection a shadow crossed the glass near the reception desk at a height too low for anyone standing. I told myself it was a balloon on a string from day shift. Halloween week is full of useful lies. When I logged the minute, my pen scratched a truth I did not say out loud. The building wants to be visited. 1:38 a.m. dispatch asked us to hold on for until the senior rolled in. Possible insider, my trainer mouthed without radio, just to spend the words somewhere. We posted at the nurses' station, backs to stainless, eyes on the long H of hallways. The motion lights a section down winked once and stayed up, like a person who pretends they didn't nod off. The stairwell at the far end confessed first, a single tread complaint, rubber whisper, then stillness. If you've worked stairs long enough, you know the difference between someone climbing and someone placing a foot to spend a sound. This was the second one. I took 3 soft steps toward the door. The draft at my ankles reversed, like a thought taken back. 1:42 a.m. The elevator counted floors again without requests, ground to 4, and this time it opened. The empty cab smelled faintly of wet paper and alcohol wipes. On the back wall, a smudge at hip height the size of a wheel bracket's kiss, chalky and fresh, then wiped in a circle by someone who wanted to leave less than a clue and more than nothing. The car stayed with its doors parted 2 fingers, polite, as if waiting for a person who enjoys being late. "We're not riding it," my trainer said. That was one of the few doctrines I agreed with completely. At the pharmacy's side pass-through, the felt bumper had a new shine where a palm might rest to eavesdrop on late pickups that don't exist at 1:45 in the morning. The till on the counter behind the glass sat 2 inches askew, the way closers square them when they chase policy to the line. I breathed on the glass and watched the fog pull to a cooler star in the corner. There is a kind of residual on glass that remembers a face. I told myself it remembered mine from 10 minutes ago. Then I wrote down that I told myself that. 1:46 a.m. The front glass on camera opened and closed in a single sigh again. Access control stayed polite. No card, no alarm, no event. The HVAC changed tone exactly when the door sighed, which is either physics or choreography. My trainer radioed, voice low. "Front entry ghost open, no log, holding, senior status?" "2 out," dispatch said. Their calm sits on your chest like a cat. 1:48 a.m. The stairwell next to imaging spent a cluster of sounds the way dice spend luck. 1 step, a pause, 2 together, then a careful return down half a tread. Exactly the rhythm you hear when someone realizes you're listening. The door's vertical seam learned to breathe. I touched the push bar with a fingernail. Cool. The hinge pin wore a fleck of black nitrile like a hangnail. We'd bag that later. For now, we made a note neither of us would read back to ourselves until daylight. Stairs learning us. 2:01 a.m. Senior came in on the air first, boot rubber on lobby tile, the sound buildings respect. He called security, the way policy teaches, and let the echo anchor him to floor and wall. We answered. Hold, he said. Let me come up ugly if someone's timing the car. He took the stairs. 2:03 a.m. He reached 4, eyes already doing the quiet math that replaces bravado, sight lines, angles, camera cones, where a person could crouch and let motion sensors go dumb. We split the H, trainer for the West Hall, senior for the East, me as hinge, radios low, lights up in sections like polite applause. 2:06 a.m. The elevator dinged without us, doors closing themselves from that 2-finger courtesy to a seal. The indicator stayed on 4. Senior peered into the seams, leaned close enough to hear air. Do not ride, he said again, and the lesson belonged to the metal. The supply closet seal number matched its book, adhesive edge, still smooth, except for that one corner. Senior ran a nail under it a hair, then stopped, then pressed it back. If it breaks on daylight, he said. He let the metal tell him nothing. 2:10 a.m. We pulled the stair door at the far end and held the threshold together, 3 bodies making a rectangle nobody could borrow. The well kept its breath. On the landing below, a fresh dust swirl made a soft comma at the edge, where a toe would pivot if a person decided not to climb after all. Senior took a photo that would help no one and still felt better having it. 2:12 a.m. dispatch again. Front entry shows closed, side loading shows closed, garage gate shows open, audit says last movement before midnight. We all looked at each other like the word before had turned into a tooth. Copy, Senior said. We'll verify garage last. 2:15 a.m. The overhead in pediatrics chirped alive and played 3 notes from nobody's playlist, exactly enough to be a dare, and then died. Every head turned at once. Every shoe didn't move. Then we moved because standing still teaches the wrong person the song. 2:18 a.m. We regrouped at the nurses' station. Senior put down the rules in a voice that didn't invite votes. We hold the floor. We don't give them the car. We listen more than we chase. When we move as a hinge. The building agreed by doing its favorite trick, being boringly normal while our clocks learned how to throb. And then, from the stair by imaging, running steps, not panic fast, not show off fast, just the economy of somebody who knows the distance between landings, away from us, not toward. Senior's eyes met mine, ground. We moved like a door closing, each piece covering the other, and let the elevator chime behind us to an empty hallway that wanted an audience. The front glass was breathing to a different rhythm now. The garage gate below us was either about to explain itself or teach us a new word for open. 2:21 a.m. The stair by imaging exhaled the decision first, air low at our ankles rolling away from us like a whisper with some place to be. Then the steps, not panic fast, not showy, just that economy you hear from someone who knows exactly how many risers live between landings. Down, then down again. Ground, Senior said, only the word, only once. We moved as a hinge, trainer to the west corridor, me to the center spine, Senior to the east, each of us covering the other's gaps. We didn't give the elevator the satisfaction, we took the stairs. On the first landing, the well still held the shape of the sound, the way warmth hangs after a hand leaves steel. On the next, the dust at the edge wore a small comma like a toe had pivoted hard and then remembered manners. At the third, a scuff at hip height rode the painted rail, a soft grey kiss exactly where a bracket would pass if a cart had ever lived here. No carts live here at night. Hospitals sell rules like sugar. 2:24 a.m. The lobby showed us its innocent face, volunteer desk neat, pumpkins curling at the corners, the directory board steady and smug. The front glass slid open for nobody, then closed for nobody, a single long sigh that made the HVAC change key in the vents. We hit the tile, crossed with the respectful thunder of shoes that mean it, and bled into the vestibule. Outside, the parking throat held rain smell without the rain, storm somewhere else, still deciding. The garage gate across the drive sat open, as if it had been born that way. The exit sensor blanked a red eye, then remembered shame and glowed green. Senior cut right for the garage mouth, Trainer took the lot, and I took the front walk because sometimes people try doors twice if you let them believe in luck. Security, Senior called the way policy writes it, and the Echo tucked itself under the canopy and waited for someone to own it. A half-beat later, from the garage, the scrape of rubber corrected by a patient hand. Not a sprint, placement. Then a half-jog out of the far pedestrian door and across the throat toward the street, steps barely kissing concrete, a silhouette smaller than mine by a handspan, hood close, arms tight, practiced. Left, Trainer called, already moving, then street, and the shape dissolved into the gap between buildings where cameras are poorest and a delivery truck throws a permanent shadow. Senior made the corner in time to count breaths, not a face. I cut the opposite angle and learned we were exactly late enough. 2:26 a.m. The front glass breathed again behind me, polite and empty, like a room clearing its throat once to remind you it exists. The access log on my phone smiled at me with nothing. No card, no push, no request. The overhead speaker in the lobby tested 3 notes from nowhere and gave up on being a radio. The garage gate stayed open like a thought left on the counter. We regrouped on the mats and took inventory of what we had that wasn't a face. Air that knew where to go, a door that liked to help, a gate that forgave, and the taste of almost in the back of our throats. Dispatch asked for a status I didn't want to give. Senior gave it anyway. Possible runner, no contact, garage gate open, front entry cycling without log. We will sweep and lock. 2:29 a.m. Back inside, the elevator decided to play its part. Indicator on 4, doors parted 2 fingers, cab smelling like alcohol wipes and wet paper. Senior set his palm near the seam without giving it skin and said the doctrine again, softer to the metal as much as to us. We are not riding with you. The cab forgot to be charming and closed. Halloween week makes close calls feel chosen. The bowl on the nurse's station still held that single wrapper folded into a square, and I realized I kept counting it like it could ever change. You look for changes when you miss the person who makes them. The hallway gave us nothing and made us feel grateful it wasn't worse. 2:32 a.m. We started the sweep back up from the front because pride makes people sloppy. We didn't want to be people. Exterior doors, seated, pharmacy glass, clean, lock shoulders square. Pediatric wing, chairs back in a row so straight my teeth hurt. Imaging, lights at night dim, machines asleep like whales. Stairwells, 1 new dirt comma at the second landing, nothing on the third, a fingernail squeak on the push bar like a glove had tasted it and decided later would be better. The mist hung polite between us as if the building wanted to be thanked for at least letting us hear the leaving. 2:41 a.m. paper asked for its meal. Senior opened his notebook and I opened mine, and we spoon-fed the night back to the part of the job that forgives nothing and forgets everything. Front entry control reported closed the whole window. No card, no door forced, no door held. On camera, 2 breath opens we all watched, one at 2:24, one at 2:26. HVAC changed tone on both. Pressure equalization, maintenance would say in daylight. I wrote door self-cycled, no event, and disliked every word. Garage gate controller. Status open when we arrived, audit says last motion before midnight. The sensor eye tried red, then remembered green when we stood under it. Senior underlined before like it had personally insulted him. We'll pull the relay log, he said, meaning we would ask a box to confess to being helpful without being asked. Elevator monitor. No hall calls recorded from 1:15 to 3. Car position reported 4 during our whole mess. Door cycle count increased by 2. Our eyes say 3. 1 tease, 1 open, 1 polite, close. The cab wall smudge at hip height was fresh and then wiped, a circle of clean inside dirty. I wrote bracket kiss, partial wipe, then crossed out bracket, then wrote hip height chalk and let my pen hate me. Pharmacy passed through. The felt pad wore a bright palm oval new enough to catch light. The till sat 2 inches cocked. Alarm history, no open, no tampers. Cooling units were the only things that confessed to being alive. I put ask day shift in the margin because sometimes daylight tells you a human thing, like we forgot to square the drawer and all your ghosts turn into training. Stairwells. Far East hinge pin wore a black nitrile hangnail that came away on hotel tape and stuck to an index card like a truth we'd earned. Dust on the second landing read a comma where a toe would pivot. Third landing, clean. West stair breathed out at 2:21, in at 2:27 like a chest deciding on a story. None of that pleases a report. Nurse's station printer. 1 warm blank sheet at 1:21. No job in the queue. Later, a test line it wasn't scheduled to offer. Senior wrote, printer wandered and let it be furniture. I kept the sheet because keeping sheets is how you trick yourself into thinking you're competent. Overhead speaker, 3 orphan notes at 2:15, no source on panel. The log said no page. The building admitted to nothing and played the dare anyway. Directory board reflection, lower glass shadow near the reception desk around 1:33, too low for a standing person. We wrote reflections unreliable because we like to sound like scientists even when we're telling ourselves a bedtime story. We walked the 4th floor again with the kind of attention that makes air feel watched. At the far end, by the clinic's staff-only door, a glove finger, black nitrile turned inside out, torn at the pad, rested in the lip where the threshold meets tile. Tiny, almost funny, exactly like the one I'd bagged in a hotel stair months back. Senior lifted it with the same piece of hotel tape he uses for lint, stuck it to a blank index card, wrote the minute on the corner like a prayer, and slipped it into a small envelope. "Proof is always the smallest thing in the room," he said, not to impress me, just because truth wanted a place to sit. 3:03 a.m. the garage finally admitted a clang the way tired metal does when temperature changes. The gate still read open on the panel and still sat open in the world. Maintenance would tell us in the morning that a sticky relay can hold a mouth wide without logging a sentence. That is useful and unhelpful, and both. 3:08 a.m. We locked what we could lock without inventing authority and left what we had to leave because doctors like access more than we like sleeping. Dispatch asked for the line we always hate giving, site secure. Senior gave it and wrote additional patrols in the empty that follows. On the way out, my eye went where it kept going. The candy bowl on the nurse's station. The folded square wrapper. Still one. Still folded. Still a joke the building tells itself about restraint. I reached to straighten the lip of the bowl and felt the cool ring print my palm. When I looked, my print wasn't there. Metal remembers what it wants. We left the 4th floor with small things and almosts and a hallway that wanted to be believed. The hold ended. The building decided to be boring again, and somewhere near the street, someone who knows the count of our landings learned our names without asking. Daylight wears scrubs in this building. By 7 a.m., engineering rolled a cart that smelled like coffee and ozone. The pharmacy manager arrived with keys like silver insects, and Senior had a legal pad that could double as a shield. We fed paper first because sunlight likes a narrative. Front entry panel reported closed the entire window. No card reads, no door forced, no held open. We showed them the camera, a pair of slow breath opens that should have friends in the log, and do not. Engineering said, pressure equalization, the way people say weather when they want the sky to sign the report. Garage gate controller. Status open on arrival. Audit shows last motion before midnight. The tech pulled the cover and found a tired relay that could stick with temperature swings and pretend it never left home. He tapped it with the back of a screwdriver. The gate blinked like a nap had ended. "We'll swap it," he said. Later today. Later has a flavor. Elevator monitor. No hall calls received between 1 and 3. Position stuck on 4. Door cycle count advanced by 2. Senior swore it had opened 3 times. I agreed with his eyes. The elevator company on the phone said phantom calls. Their tone said, "Please don't make it my problem." They promised a software patch. Patches are bandages you put on stories. Pharmacy pass-through. The manager squared the till with a single practiced shove and gave us the smile people save for referees. "We left in a hurry last night," she said. "Delivery ran late." Her eyes didn't leave the glass. We pointed to the palm shine on the felt. She nodded like someone acknowledging a stray fingerprint on a clean window. Alarm history? Nothing. Cooling units? Happy. The refrigerator hummed like restraint. Stairwells. Engineering wiped the nitrile hangnail off the hinge pin with alcohol and put it in a tiny zip bag, we pretended mattered. They vacuumed the dust commas off the landings because dust embarrasses buildings during tours. The door closers got a tweak so they would kiss latches instead of breathe at them. We added cheap armor the way you do when budget lives in a drawer. A wedge magnet on the lobby glass to log even a sigh. A camera angle shifted to bite deeper into the vestibule reflection. A contact sensor on the pedestrian door at the garage throat. A tamper tag on the pharmacy pass-through, and fresh numbered seals on the supply closet. Senior walked the 4th floor with a wax pencil and drew a dot the size of a freckle at shoulder height on every stair rail. If a palm rides it again, we'll see the smear. Day shift brought their own gravity. Pediatric staff reset chairs so straight they looked angry. Imaging spun up machines to idle. A nurse with a Halloween pin on her badge told us the music chirp at 2:15 sounded like the vending machine on break room radio. Engineering unplugged the vending machine and the chirp went on living. Daylight explanations are generous until they are not. By noon, the garage relay was replaced. The lobby magnet chirped once to prove it could tattle, and the elevator company promised their patch would be applied by close of business. Senior wrote return tonight in the margin like a bet. He assigned me the revisit because someone has to prove a building wrong, and I still had rookie left to spend. Halloween week doesn't end at sunrise. It naps and waits for smaller crowds. I came back the next night alone by design. The air had traded storm for that brittle October clarity that makes sound travel like it has a destination. Senior's rules rode my shoulders. Do not give the car your body. Stagger your laps. Change your song. 10:58 p.m. I started early because habit is what you break first. Exterior walk, doors seated, loading lock square, garage gate behaved like a promise. The new contact on the pedestrian door blinked green once, as if saying hello. I nodded back because I am the sort of person who nods at plastic when it's helpful. 12:03 a.m. The lobby magnet tattled a breath open nobody asked for. The panel logged it this time. Seal break, 1 second. Auto close. Camera showed the same polite sigh, now with a friend in the log. Engineering had given us nouns for air. 12:13 a.m. Elevator indicators dozed on ground until my shoes touched the cool mat. I didn't press anything. The car still counted floors to 4 and held with the doors closed. The position made a liar of the quiet. I let it be. 12:19 a.m. 4th floor came up in polite sections of motion lights. The wax dots Senior had placed on the stair rails sat perfect until one, not even a full smear, just a thumb ellipse in the wax at the far stair, shoulder height for someone smaller than me. Fresh enough to catch light, faint enough to be shy. 12:27 a.m. At the nurse's station, the candy bowl held 2 wrappers now folded into squares where yesterday it had held one. Day shift swore they tossed the lone joke. Either they missed, or someone likes tiny paper trophies. The printer minded its business. The overhead ate its cough. 12:31 a.m. The pharmacy pass-through pad showed a new half-moon of nap disturbed, less palm, more 2 fingers placed and lifted. The tamper tag sat honest, the seal numbers matched, the refrigerator hummed an alibi. I put a pencil dot at the edge of the felt where finger oil would polish it if it kept happening. 12:37 a.m. The elevator on my back began counting floors again without request, ground to 4, and this time doors parted 2 fingers and stayed. I set my palm an inch from the seam. Air brushed out, then drew back in, slow, like a body trying not to breathe loud. "We are not riding," I told the car, and the seam forgot me. 12:41 a.m. The stair by imaging exhaled once, then learned stillness. I placed a folded receipt 1 inch into the threshold on the clinic's staff-only door, edge aligned to the tile grout like a witness with a ruler. Cheap, petty, useful. I stepped away and did not look back for 2 minutes. When I returned, the receipt had pivoted 10 degrees, exactly the move paper makes when air leverages it from the other side. The latch line held, the seal dots on the screws held, the door still wore its innocence like cologne. 12:52 a.m. Garage contact chirped a short, open and close at the pedestrian door. I was on 4. Lobby camera showed no one in the throat. Garage camera caught a shadow moving in the mirrored back of a parked SUV. Low, fast, center mass, too compact for a tall adult. Gait efficient, arms close. The door contact logged 1 second of life and then manners returned. That was a new song. 1:01 a.m. The overhead in pediatrics tried 3 notes again and failed. I stood under the speaker and heard the absence like a shape. On the back of the nurse's station monitor, a smear at hip height showed where a jacket had kissed plastic. I wiped it with alcohol and left a line only I would miss tomorrow. 1:07 a.m. 4th floor stairwell. The wax dot, where the thumb had been, now wore a drag a half-inch longer, a signature of someone testing whether their print would be noticed. I erased nothing. Buildings get offended when you clean too fast. 1:11 a.m. The receipt at staff only had pivoted back to square without help. That is not a magic trick. That is air curling when a stairwell door below opens and resets pressure. I wrote air playing helpful, so I wouldn't write person practicing with doors. I listened. The building listened back. 1:16 a.m. Lobby magnet tattled again. 1 second breath. Camera saw it. Log owned it. Progress is the slowest animal on night shift. 1:21 a.m. The elevator finally behaved like an elevator and ferried a janitor to 2. He lifted his hands like a man entering a church and said, "Not me," to the overhead notes we hadn't accused him of. I watched his cartwheels. Their rubber rings were intact, brackets clean, timing honest. He rolled away jangling keys in a rhythm that makes people feel safer than they are. 1:29 a.m. Pharmacy felt pad at the pass-through. My pencil dot blurred a hair. 2 fingers had visited, or air wanted to be a hand. I put a second dot a finger width away and told myself I wasn't making art. 1:35 a.m. The garage contact chimed open for 2 seconds and then closed. The camera saw a coat hem shadow cross the SUV's mirror again, a little higher this time, as if the person were carrying something small and firm, clipboard height, tight to their ribs. I took a still we both know won't convince anyone later. 1:41 a.m. The stairs outbreathed the floor twice in a row like someone doing square breaths before a race. The elevator eased its doors 2 fingers and then killed the courtesy, shy. The lobby magnet stayed quiet for a whole 5 minutes. I made a note of the quiet, because quiet is data when noise is normal. 1:48 a.m. The candy bowl at the nurse's station held 1 folded square again. Somebody had either taken a wrapper or added one and then taken 2. That is a sentence with no useful end. I left it there because sometimes you let little lies sit where they are, so the big ones come closer. 2:01 a.m. The garage relay stayed honest. The pedestrian contact tattled once more. 1 second, no face. I walked the exterior in a slow, uninteresting loop and found a thin brass shim lying in the lip of a curb drain where water would hide a sin. Filed smooth, width of patience. I did what I always do. Hotel tape, index card, minute in the corner like a charm. Then I went back upstairs to tell the 4th floor we were still friends. If the building wanted to play, it had learned I could count. I had learned it could too. I held 4 like a hinge and let the night decide whether it wanted to spend itself on us or save its trick for another week. Morning made liars of a few things and gentlemen of none. Engineering loved their new nouns. The lobby magnet tattled breath opens like a metronome that finally learned counting. The garage contact confessed to 1 second flirts no human wished to own. The elevator vendor sent an email that said patch applied and a voicemail that said call if it keeps being weird. Paper ate well. Day shift asked better questions than reports do. The pharmacy manager squinted at the felt on the pass-through and touched the edge where I'd left my pencil dots. We wipe this, she said, which is not the same as we touched this. Pediatrics restacked chairs in a line so straight it could cut glass and still found 1 seat eased a finger's width from the row by lunch. Imaging swore their speakers don't speak. Janitorial showed me their cartwheels like hands at communion, rubber rings intact, brackets clean, timing honest. Nobody had a story that wanted to be a culprit. We logged 3 small souvenirs that daylight could not bully. The thin brass shim from the curb drain, the black nitrile hangnail off a stair hinge, the torn glove finger from the staff-only threshold. Each went into a little envelope with a minute in the corner, like charms, pretending to be evidence. If a prosecutor ever had to make dinner from that pantry, they'd order takeout. I kept returning to the small arithmetic of Halloween week, a candy bowl that travelled from 1 folded wrapper to 2 and back to 1, a lobby door that learned to breathe on record only after we taught it the word breath, an elevator that liked being on 4 when no one liked being in it, stairs that practiced economy instead of speed, a garage contact that blushed for a second whenever a coat hem practiced in the SUV's mirror. Senior closed our file with the sentence that always sounds like a shrug, dressed as virtue. Site secure, increased patrols recommended. He added 1 more line I haven't seen him write in years, possible practiced insider, not confirmed, and underlined practiced until the paper roughened. Buildings have habits. Sometimes people become one of them. My rookie brain wanted a face. My night brain knew better. If you want a last picture, it's a small one. Floor 4 at an hour that doesn't belong to anyone, motion lights waking a polite panel at a time, the nurse's station bowl holding a single square of foil like a punchline, the staff-only door wearing its innocence in perfect paint, the stair exhaling just enough to stir the folded receipt into a 10-degree nod, and then deciding it was never alive. In the elevator scene, 2 fingers of air practiced the idea of an apology. Halloween ended on paper when someone peeled the bats off the volunteer desk and tossed the tape with a sigh. It didn't end for the corridor. I worked 2 more overnights that week. The lobby magnet tattled twice and was proud. The garage contact admitted 1 second of life and pretended it was weather. The elevator forgot my name and remembered floor 4. The candy bowl learned both 1 and 2, like a child practicing skip counting. I don't believe in ghosts in clinics. I believe in routes: ground door, lobby breath, car to 4, staff only, stair, garage, throat, street. I believe in tools: shims filed smooth, jackets that don't sound against plastic, shoes that like landing edges. I believe in timing that waits for HVAC size and single chimes from speakers that swear they are off. Mostly I believe in people who practice until a building thinks they're one of its bones. If the night owed me a final word, it wrote it on a scrap I keep in my pocket. We were exactly late enough. And I hear that sentence whenever a door pulls a small breath by itself or an elevator pauses where it hasn't been asked to pause. On the next Halloween, when the schedule says clinic patrol again, I'll bring fresh index cards, new tape, and the patient arrogance of a person who will count the same stairs as many times as it takes for a building to admit it has a song. Halloween makes even honest buildings breathe funny. Tonight we walked a government office that blinked welcome at the wrong time, a highway motel where a single wheel learned our song, and a clinic that kept floor 4 ready for someone who already knew the route. Allegedly true, told the way nights remember. If you work nights, guards, clerks, janitors, nurses, here's the pocket list I carry. Change your lap. Never keep the same tempo twice, trust air. Doors tell on themselves at ankle height, plant small witnesses. A receipt edge or a coin can be braver than a camera, listen for timing. Compressors, chimes, and vents make cover for practice people. When in doubt, hold a corner and make the building come to you. If any of these stories matched something you have lived, you are not alone. Share your account in the comments. Keep names and locations off the record. I read every one, and some of you will hear your nights here soon. If this kept you company, tap like, subscribe, and ring the bell so the next shift finds you. It helps more than you think. For the audio crowd, this episode's full transcript lives in the description. Next week, 3 more allegedly true accounts, an overnight museum crew that keeps finding ladders moved, a rural dispatch center that logs calls from lines that do not exist, and a storm shelter where the emergency exit keeps opening inward. Different halls, same breath. Until then, keep your keys quiet, your corners honest, and your timing your own. Lock up safe.